Chapter 1. Ah! Zhao Emo woke up from his dream once again. He opened his eyes. His body was drenched in sweat. He forced himself to sit up on the bed. The exquisite treehouse in front of him was still the same. The walls had not become pure white, and the window weaved by tree vines had not become glass windows. There were still some tender grass and flowers growing on the black beams above him. He did not know if this treehouse had any hidden dangers, but what Zhao Emo could confirm was that he had not returned home and his transmigration had become a reality. He was sure that this was not a dream, because he had already woken up many times. He had really transmigrated. Zhao Emo slowly stood up. His right hand held onto a walking stick that was full of patterns, trying to make himself stand more steadily. After all, falling from a tree that was more than 10 meters tall, even if he was an elf, it would still be very easy for him to be seriously injured. Moreover, the previous William Blackleaf was an underage elf. He had not yet cultivated battle energy and magic, so he was still considered a weakling among the elves. But transmigrating into an elf's body seems to be worth it. This face, this figure, these long legs, they are all as handsome as I was in the past. Zhao Emo looked at the mirror. His handsome face, pointy ears, and slender legs made him sigh in his heart. But Zhao Emo did not want to talk about the past. He had been in this world for half a day, but there were no signs of him going back. Since he was already here, he would make the best of it. He would forget the past and start a new life. With a little bit of joy in his heart, he would strive to survive in this damned world. Moreover, in this world where there might be gods, there would be problems if he spoke carelessly. Although he really missed his parents and wanted to take care of them in their old age, he had read so many transmigration novels, and not many people had gone back, and the lucky thing was, he had 2 older brothers. The eldest and second brother had already started their own families, so it was not a problem for them to take care of his parents. He only hoped that as a lonely single dog, his sudden death while playing games did not make the old couple too sad. If possible, they would shed fewer tears for their unfilial son. It was best for them to live healthily. I am William Blackleaf. Yes, I am William. He walked out of the treehouse and stood on the balcony that was filled with golden light, enjoying the sunlight. His body felt warm and full of energy. William's gaze became more and more distant, and his thoughts became more and more jumpy. 98. 98. The game only required 98 per month. That's right, Gods was a monthly virtual reality game. After all, after generations of pay-to-win games and point-and-click games were born, all virtual games in the future had become monthly games. For example, the most popular games in history were Glory, Zero, God's Domain, Sword Wars, StarCraft, and Conviction. It was also these games that laid the foundation for monthly games. As for Gods of War, it officially started its open beta in 2333. Because this unknown production company did not do much promotion in the early stages, the game was not very popular in the early stages. After all, it was too difficult to make a name for oneself among the many virtual reality games. It wasn't until 3 years later that it became completely popular. It even reached the highest number of players in the history of the game, with 68 million players online at the same time. It couldn't be helped. With the development of technology, there were a lot of idlers, but there were also a lot of games. Gods, this is a world with battle energy and magic. Here, you might be lucky enough to become a dragon slayer, marry a princess, and reach the pinnacle of your life. But at the same time, if the warriors were not careful, they would be eaten by the dragon. Then, the dragon would take revenge and massacre the city, destroy the guild base, and tens of thousands of players would die. Then, they would be retaliated by the angry NPC countries. And this was a world with gods. Every player had the dream of becoming a god. Unfortunately, William had played for 10 years in his previous life and hadn't been able to become a god. He hadn't seen many gods either. It wasn't that he couldn't become a god, but that he died early. he died in the gaming cabin. Although in the history of games, whether it was the little tyrant game console, computer games, mobile games, semi-virtual reality games, virtual reality games, and so on, there would always be a small number of talents who suddenly died. But this didn't make the players fearful. They still had to play, and they couldn't stop taking medicine. Money had to be spent, and the monthly card had to be renewed. Could they just watch as their money flowed away? Of course, even before William died, he didn't see other players become gods, not even fake gods. The main reason was that it was too difficult. No matter if they were professional players or players from top guilds, their upper limit at that time was legendary. But even so, not many people reached the legendary realm, and the strength of legendary was also divided into different levels. Of course, before he died, he had just touched the leg hair of the later stages of the game. What level did he belong to back then? Naturally, he was at the peak of the entire world. He was the leader of the casual players, a legendary warrior. As for his daily job, he was a substitute. It wasn't limited to fighting, snatching bosses. When rich people threw money at him, he could also bring them to do missions to gain experience, catch pets and mounts, and so on. He could even be a part-time assassin, helping to kill people. After all, he was a legendary, and he was much stronger than ordinary players. But it was also because he was a legendary. Not only did he have to spend money, he also had to work hard. And without money, how could he build equipment, embed gems, and strengthen weapons? If he didn't want to work hard without money, he should just quit the game. William had always suspected that after NetEase went bankrupt, there must have been a lot of programmers who chose this company. Otherwise, how could the equipment system be so fraudulent? For a poor guy like him, if he hadn't started on the first day of the game's open beta, if he hadn't had good skills, and if he hadn't seen the diversified future of the game, and if he hadn't played day and night, he would have had a huge advantage over the players who came later. Then, he would have snowballed by substitute training, earning money, working hard, continuing to substitute training, earning money, and working hard again. Only then could he have worked hard step by step to become a legendary. Otherwise, he would have starved to death in the gaming capsule. It's a pity that my liver still died. William Blackleaf touched his stomach and helplessly sat on the bamboo-woven rocking chair. He picked up the fruit wine that was worth 30 copper coins and drank a mouthful. It was sweet and not spicy. He felt great. At least he wasn't a dog at the beginning, and he was much better than other players. But I've been reborn. I still have to continue working hard. He had to think about how to use his identity and how to survive. William Blackleaf, one of the elfin lords at the edge of the Blackleaf Forest in the south. His nickname is the Border Lord. It seems like I'm a half-elf? William had only inherited a few of his memories. He didn't know why this guy fell from a tree and fell so badly, even dying. Instead, he was lucky enough to be reborn in another world. But now wasn't the time to think about this. He should think about how he could live better. That's not right. I still remember that when I was over level 20, I seemed to have some dealings with him. He was a very strong lord. Although the place was small, his ambition wasn't small. I also took on many missions here. But this guy had only been in the open beta for half a year before he died in a chaotic battle with many parties. His territory was occupied by the Iron Nation. It was really a bit tragic. His father was the previous border lord. He could survive in the gaps between the Blackleaf Forest and the human nation's territory, and he even had the ability to benefit from both sides. But his son didn't have a future. Ever since he inherited this territory, there seemed to be a lot of civilians passing by. He only succeeded in expanding the town later on. And after he caused a lot of trouble, he didn't pledge loyalty to the nation, nor did he completely hide in the Blackleaf Forest. Although I forgot what trouble it was, what he did later on was simply courting death. William sighed slightly and started to recall the memory fragments in his mind. The border territory didn't take up a lot of space. The east and west sides of the town were very wide, so he could make good use of it. There were 3,000 people in the border town. 1,500 of them were half-elves, 1,000 were humans and 500 were elves. Those 500 pure-blooded elves, yes. In his memory, it seemed that they were the personal guards that his mother had given to him. These personal guards were not bad and very loyal, but they were too arrogant. They were very unhappy with the other half of his human blood. Even if his mother had the royal blood of the elves, these 500 pure-blooded elves planned to use their lifespan of thousands of years to completely outlive William, this half-elf, before returning to the Blackleaf Forest. My mother is actually a royal elves? William's mind was a little messy. The sudden memory made him come back to his senses. Just as William was about to ask someone to support him and patrol the territory, a voice appeared beside his ear. Ding dong. Countdown to the start of the version 1.0 open beta. 364 days, 23 hours and 59 minutes. The current border lord, with the noble royal blood of the elves, William Blackleaf. He gradually fell into deep thought. Because according to his imagination, after he transmigrated to another world, he should walk on the path of defeating giant dragons, marrying a princess, meeting gods and killing gods. But how did he become an NPC? Why? Why do I have to face this group of undying cheats? William was suddenly a little confused. Chapter 2. Half-Elf Template has been activated. Blackleaf Elf Royal Bloodline Potential has been activated. Human Legendary Hero Bloodline Potential has been activated. Experience pool for releasing missions is set at 1,000 experience points. Interface attributes have been activated. William Blackleaf's mouth twitched. He did not think about the players anymore. He did not expect his father, who had disappeared, to have a legendary bloodline. But if he did not have this ability, he would not have been able to fool his mother, who was already an elf princess. He did not know if his father was dead or had disappeared. But logically speaking, NPCs with legendary bloodlines usually had very high luck and would not die easily. If they had the strength of a legendary level, they would often obtain noble titles and power. Because the legendary level was the top combat power of each continent. Oh, is he dead or has he gone missing? William raised his eyebrows and muttered, Attributes panel. Name, William Blackleaf, countdown to version 1.0 open beta. 364 days, 23 hours, 57 minutes, race, half-elf level, 8 bloodline potential, legendary, basic attributes plus 8%, position level, none endowment, handsome, passive. Other than those in the dark faction, all other humans, gods, animals and plants will have a favorable impression of you that is equal to your charm. When you trade with other intelligent creatures, you will also have a certain discount. The higher the level of the other party and the higher the bloodline level, the less obvious the effect. Level 8 unallocated 32 free attribute points, 8 skill points. Every increase in level, free attribute points plus 4, 4-dimensional attribute plus 1. Experience 0/4200 age, 16 young, health, 270 endurance, 340 basic attributes, power, 34 physical strength, 27 agility, 38 intelligence, 25 special attributes, charm, 43 luck, 3 evaluation. Among the level 8 young half-elves you can already kick a human kindergarten with your perverseness. Health points need not be explained. Once it reaches 0, it will be game over. Endurance was a little different from other online games. Any action, behavior, and skills in this world would consume a certain amount of endurance. Even if you were having sex, endurance would also be consumed. So if a player with a low level wanted to do something bad, it would easily cause millions of elite soldiers to leave. From then on, his girlfriend would think that he could not take it anymore. Then, they would live happily apart. Of course, if a player wanted to have sex, They had to accumulate 1,000 points of friendship first. Basically, this would take half a year therefore. One had to keep an eye on one's stamina at all times and not waste any unnecessary movements. Otherwise, if one ran out of stamina and couldn't wield a weapon during a crucial moment in battle, they would basically be dead. Strength equals endurance equals 50% of basic attack power, stamina equals health equals 50% of the base defense value, agility equals movement speed. It has nothing to do with dodge rate or critical rate. Intelligence equals 50% base magic defense. However, intelligence had a hidden attribute, and that was mental power. In other words, the longer one concentrated, the more mental power they would consume. During a battle, one needed to constantly concentrate in order to hit the enemy or hit the enemy's fatal spot. The longer a battle went on, the more their hidden spiritual power would be consumed. During the battle, they would slowly lose focus, which would lead to a decrease in accuracy, mental relaxation, and so on. At the same time, intelligence would also increase a magician's skill attack. As for talent and good looks, of course, he was very handsome. Looks were the truth. Combat power was only temporary. Being handsome was something that would last forever. What else could William say to the elves, who were creatures that valued their looks, for them to have such an endowment? Motherf *Ker, can't you give me something practical? However, he didn't have to worry. With a legendary bloodline, the endowment would also appear as his level broke through. In addition, he could also do some hidden missions to increase his endowment. After all, he could only look forward to it now because his legendary bloodline seemed to be fake. His luck was simply too low. Of course, this had something to do with his early death in his previous life. Or rather, there were so many legendary bosses, and there were always many unlucky people who had to travel thousands of miles to die. Actually, when William saw this attribute panel that was similar to a player's, he was a little shocked. Fortunately, he was calm and intelligent. He carefully looked at some of the attributes and felt a little lucky. As expected of a legendary bloodline potential, a level 8 attribute that hadn't been increased was really a little strong. If he went to the novice village to kill level 0 small accounts, he would be able to kill a small child with one slash. In this game, the bloodline potential was very important. It almost represented the ultimate upper limit of NPCs. Unlike players, as long as they worked hard and spent money, they would become stronger sooner or later. Although it was also very difficult to advance in the later stages, they were much luckier than NPCs. And the legendary bloodline potential actually doesn't have the weakness of half-elves. It even perfectly combines the advantages of both humans and elves. The four-dimensional attributes can be said to be very strong. However, I definitely can't be reckless in the way I level up. I still have to specialize in what I have to. Otherwise, I'll die sooner or later. There were races in the world of gods that were like suns. For example, the elves, the dragons, the demons, and so on. Of course, today's introduction was mainly about the elves. Their innate attributes were much stronger than other races. Long-range shooting was their specialty. It was as if there was a lock in their head. Everyone's surname was Lu. Anyway, when the arrows hit the target, they wouldn't be able to explain it. They weren't weak in close combat either. Whether it was elven warriors, elven knights, elven rangers, or even elven mages, they were all extremely strong existences. As for defense and vitality, this group of fellows who were born with a lifespan of thousands of years, how could their defense be weak? Believe it or not, they were even tougher than orcs. Those who didn't understand the gods game dared to say that elves' defense was not as high as orcs. But it was also relatively speaking. The key was still the occupation and adding points, agility, hee. William laughed but didn't say anything. Elven rangers flying kites was no joke. But looking at the humans, orcs, gnomes, undead and so on in the gods' continent, they were all created by nature using the leftovers. Of course, the elves had so many advantages, but it wasn't that they didn't have any weaknesses. Their fertility was extremely low. This was the pain of every elf. It was very difficult for pure-blooded elves to reproduce. Every war and the fall of every elf was a huge blow to the elves. A pair of elves did certain things day and night, completely squeezing the male elf dry. If a female elf could get pregnant within 10 years, it would be a blessing from the goddess of luck. For 10 years they had sex continuously. The hit rate was 1 out of 3,650. What kind of probability was that? If this was an orc, 10 years would be enough to develop a sizable tribe. In William's previous life, there were many players who chose the good-looking elves in the early stages. In the end, after playing for a few months, they all knelt down and deleted their accounts to start over. This was because the experience of the elves was 2 times that of the humans. That was why there was a saying in the past: elves and magic could only be used by the rich. Others could only watch from afar and couldn't play with them. Then at this moment, there would be people saying, "How about choosing a half-elven?" William really wanted to say that the half-elves had 5 times the experience, but they didn't have his awesome attribute. It would be better to choose a winged race and pretend to be an angel in the future, but it had to be mentioned that changing one's occupation to an angel depended on one's looks. The players' looks were generally not up to standard. Chapter 3. William Blackleaf was thinking about the future, dreaming of reaching the peak of his life. Suddenly, he heard footsteps. He turned his head. Slender legs, thin waist, big breasts, a graceful pure-blooded elf could be distinguished from a pure-blooded elf. One could distinguish pure-blooded elves from non-pure-blooded elves by looking at their hair and pupils. Ever since the gods' continent had been destroyed, it had been divided into 9 continents. He had appeared in the legendary continent. The pure-blooded elves in the legendary continent were also divided into different races, but their hair color was definitely the same. Their eyes and hair colors were also the same. As for the half-blooded elves, they were a little embarrassed. It was very likely that they would grow hair of different colors, and their pupils could be yellow and green. This was one of the reasons why the pure-blooded elves did not accept half-blooded elves. After all, according to the players, half-blooded elves lowered the overall appearance of the pure-blooded elves. This was unforgivable. Fortunately, the bloodline of William's legendary father seemed to be too inferior. He could not win against his mother at all, causing him to look no different from the pure-blooded elf. "My lord, I heard that you've woken up. I came up to see how your injuries are." A light voice came. William pretended to be simple and honest. "Sia, you don't have to call me lord. I'm fine. It's just that my head is a little painful and I can't remember many things." "It's good that my lord is fine. But you still need to drink this." The tall Sia was expressionless. She only took out a small emerald green bottle and handed it over. William took it in his hands, and the information of the item appeared. It took him a lot of effort to hide his excited expression. He was puzzled. "What is this?" "Water of life. Ever since I found out that you fainted after falling from a tree." Sia could not help but take a deep breath. After all, no matter if it was an elf or a half-blooded elf, falling from a tree was a great humiliation. But he had fainted, and he had been unconscious for many days, but she had to continue. "Ever since you were unconscious for too long, after a mage's examination, your mind seemed to have become chaotic. Lautner hurriedly went to the Dark Night City to get the holy artifact from your mother. He just brought it back. Now that you've woken up, since you've brought this treasure here, you'd better drink it." William hesitated for a moment, then nodded heavily. "Thank Lautner on my behalf. I'll visit him personally." "All right, I'll head down first. There isn't much to do in the territory recently, so you can rest for a few days, my lord." "Thank you," William said as he looked at the life water in his hand. Unfortunately, the Tsundra Sia had already turned around and walked away, not paying any attention to this half-elf lord. Logically speaking, after he woke up, this kind of sacred object that was almost no longer produced should not be left in his hands. However, Sia still gave it to him, which at least meant that these people were still loyal to him. Even if she didn't respect him on the surface, she was still loyal to him. William even knew that in his previous life, this group of pure-blooded elven guards had accompanied that deceiving lord to the afterlife. Sigh, I'll solve the problem of being a leader in the future. This isn't something that can be solved by relying on talent and affinity. William Blackleaf sighed and raised the small bottle to take a look. Water of life, level, legendary quantity, 10 drops effect. 1 drop can instantly restore all negative buff. 2 drops can instantly restore full HP. 3 drops can regenerate broken limbs. The more water of life there was, the more effective it would be. There was even a certain chance of resurrection. The upper limit was 10 drops. Special effect. 1 drop of water of life can extend lifespan by 100 years. Special effect. 1 drop of water of life can increase all attributes by 5 points. The upper limit is 10 drops. Special effect. 1 drop of water of life can increase health points by 100 points. The upper limit is 10 drops. Restriction. After using 10 drops, there will be no special effect. Good stuff. Without a doubt, this was the treasure of the elves. Its preciousness was no less than that of legendary equipment. Back then, William must have used this to wake up. William Blackleaf suddenly frowned. But logically speaking, after my rebirth, I only fused with a small number of memory fragments. Maybe this guy's soul was erased in advance. Otherwise, just falling from a tree doesn't match his identity as a half-elf. As the saying goes, a newborn monkey can climb trees, and a 3-year-old elf can catch a bird. Half-elves are a little inferior, but their agility shouldn't allow them to fall from a tree. Could it be that someone wants to kill me? He stood up in an instant, his expression a little ugly. He couldn't help but mutter, since William almost died in my previous life, although he couldn't escape in the end, the assassination seemed to have stopped. So there shouldn't be too much danger in the short term. The most important thing now is to hurry up and increase my strength. The key is to grow faster. As for who killed him, William couldn't determine how to assassinate him. It was easy to say, but it was too difficult to destroy the soul without any flaws. At least a middle-level or even a high-level NPC had to do it personally. Besides those powerful mysterious warlocks and mages, other occupations could also do this if they had special skills. But the scope was too wide, and he couldn't determine who it was. But he narrowed the scope a little. Who would kill him? Why would they kill him? What was the benefit of killing him? Half-elves, the royal family of the Blackleaf Elves, or the enemy of my cheap father? William shook his head. The scope was still too wide. But the Blackleaf Royal Elves might not do this. First, this group of arrogant elves rarely did things like assassination. Second, if they really wanted to kill him to ensure the purity of the royal bloodline, there was no need to wait until now. After all, he had grown up in the Dark Night City. At that time, there were plenty of opportunities for him to have an accident. Third, there was no need for them to give him 10 drops of life potion to give him a chance of resurrection. Especially since his cheap mother didn't have the ability to have 10 drops of life potion. Ever since the World Tree was destroyed, all the royal elves only had a small amount of life potion. They didn't even have time to hide it. How could they give it away so easily? I don't know how much this mother, whose name I've forgotten, paid for this life potion. William had a headache. Perhaps this was the reason why the Blackleaf Elves didn't rescue him even if he died in a chaotic battle with many forces. Perhaps these 10 drops of life potion, which were extremely precious and could even bring the dead back to life, were the final gift for his mother to sever ties with him. Sigh, I'm thinking too much. The most important thing is to hurry up and level up. I'm a lord, right? Then according to the lord's method, besides fighting monsters and completing missions, I can also level up by completing territory missions, right? When William thought of this, he couldn't help but laugh. The game gods was a little different from normal games. It was possible for the players to dominate the continent. But the powers of the countries in the legendary continent were intertwined. Even the main storyline missions of the small dukedoms weren't something that the players could easily interfere with. In the early stages of the game, the players were basically just bystanders. It was rare for them to change the overall situation. They could only gain experience from the outside. If they wanted to go deeper, they would definitely be sandwiched by the powers on both sides. Perhaps a few players were very lucky and could hang around with the protagonists of some versions. But they were still a minority and couldn't change the overall situation. The players didn't have a few years of development. Even if the players were given control of a dukedom, they would be destroyed by many lawless NPCs and steal all the wealth. That was why those ambitious guilds, clubs, professional players, and so on were beaten to a pulp. They could only follow the NPC forces to make a living. They didn't have the label of an NPC force. It wouldn't be surprising if they were killed when they went out for a walk. If they really wanted to develop alone, that would be tragic. At the very least, they should join a mercenary group led by an NPC, right? Otherwise, no matter how strong the individual players were, could they be the backing of other players? It was very obvious. They couldn't. The NPCs were the real bosses. Although the players could level up indefinitely and even have all kinds of strange endowments, no matter what level they were, they couldn't have the blessing of bloodlines. Their endowments were often not as awesome as the NPCs. This was why the players couldn't be too arrogant in the later stages. Moreover, the NPCs' levels didn't change as the players leveled up. They originally had their own levels, and their strength would still increase with the version. As for how to control the players from meeting NPCs of too high a level, naturally they would be thrown into the territory of a dukedom or a small lord, because the rankings of power and levels were empires, kingdoms, grand dukedoms, and dukedoms. As for the lord of a border town like William, they belonged to the neutral camp. There were big and small scales. A strong lord could even have power that was not inferior to a kingdom. A weak lord like a border town. The human countries were all in the light camp. As for who would choose the orcs? Sorry, the game didn't allow players to choose non-humans that were too unique. It was said that it would affect the players' hearts and easily cause social security. Because the orcs ate everything, even intelligent creatures, they ate with relish. There was once a player who used disguise skills to blend in with the orcs. In the end, he saw them eating humans alive. He was disgusted and exposed his identity. Before he could commit suicide, he was bitten a few times by a few strong orcs. His death was extremely tragic. The game experience was extremely bad, and he almost quit the game. Anyway, to the players, it was over in the early stages of the game. As for the races that could be chosen: humans, elves, half-elves, winged people, dwarfs, gnomes. Among them, there were many players who could choose from humans, elves, half-elves, and winged people. As for dwarfs and gnomes, the geniuses who could choose these two races were basically existences that didn't care about appearance. They had strong hearts and had good scientific research and mining spirit. They were the pillars of the country and the role models of the players. They were so rare that they were no less than legendary equipment. After all, the gods of another real world. Their experience and senses were no different from the real world. Very few people were too abnormal in the early stages of the game. There weren't many races to choose from, but there was a wide variety of occupations. Combat: warrior, knight, ranger, hunter, assassin, cannon master, and so on. This did not include the various hidden occupations. Magic: warlock, mage, priest, summoner, druid, and so on. Every occupation had a small branch. For example, warriors were divided into shield warriors, knife warriors, dual sword warriors, magic swordsmen. Every race had their own exclusive occupations. For example, temple knights were exclusive to humans. They needed to become a member of the Temple of Light, Holy Angel. It was obvious that this was exclusive to the winged people. But, although the winged people were also half a long-lived race, in the early stages, even if you broke their little wings, they would not be able to fly more than 3 centimeters from the ground. When the winged people knew how to fly, the players of other races would also have various flying abilities. It was just that, in terms of agility and speed, they were far inferior to the winged people. Even in the later stages of the game, when the players had experienced too many events, if they could encounter various opportunities, they did not have to be humanoid creatures. The legendary tentacle race. William could not help but think of this. He hurriedly shuddered and shook his head. Chapter 4. Outside the treehouse, the sun was bright, the grass was green, and the colorful flowers had never withered. The border town was located at the edge of the blackleaf forest. The accumulated temperature here belonged to the subtropical region. As the south was close to the sea breeze was constant and the temperature was not too high. It was like spring all year round, and the scenery was picturesque and beautiful. The town was built on a cliff that was more than 80 meters high. A not wide but very deep river flowed down from a lake in the mountains and passed through the center of the town. When the river finally fell off the cliff, it would often burst into mist and form a rainbow that lasted for a long time. Therefore, the town called it the Rainbow River. As for this cliff that was more than 80 meters high, it was the town's natural barrier to the neutral camp. It was the town's biggest advantage. Otherwise, the neighboring Iron Duchy and Black Lava Duchy would definitely endlessly harass this town. The light camp did not represent justice, and the dark camp did not necessarily represent evil. That was impossible. Everything was based on race and interest. Hence, there were many civil wars between human countries, and there were also many wars between the orc tribes. As for the surroundings of the town on the cliff, it was not all steep mountains or dense forests. It extended to the east and west, which was the edge of the cliff, and there was a large piece of black land. There were many crops planted here, and it was more than enough to feed the civilians in the town. As for the south of the town, it was the blackleaf forest that extended for more than 10,000 miles. The town was located in the narrow area of this mountain range. After crossing the mountain range in the south, one could even come into contact with the vast and boundless ocean. In the blackleaf forest at the east and west ends, there were countless magical beasts and wild beasts. Their levels were also from low to high. The stronger the magical beasts, the deeper they lived in the forest. There were even quite a number of wild dragons. After all, the Blackleaf elves were not the only ones in the Blackleaf forest. There were also many intelligent races. The half-elves and half-elves living in the small town had much less needs than humans because they didn't really like to eat food. They always liked to go to the primitive Blackleaf forest to hunt. Every time they went into the mountains, they could get a lot of fruits and prey with their skills. This was because the narrow mountain range in the south did not have many high-level prey. As long as one did not take the risk to explore the east and west ends, it was difficult to encounter higher-level wild beasts or magical beasts. The elves in the world of gods were carnivorous. They ate fruits and vegetables, but their staple food was still meat. After all, if the elves had wanted to stand at the top of the world, they would not have had the strength to contend for hegemony just by eating vegetarian food. The handsome and sharp-eared William Blackleaf was wearing a gorgeous purplish-black robe as he walked out of the treehouse nimbly. After he activated the player's interface, his leg injury recovered very quickly. It had to be said that the players had a huge advantage in this world. After all, it was impossible for the priests in this world to heal. They could only heal injuries and add various buffs to their enemies. Life was just like that. That was because the priests here were not purely supportive. They were super muscular men who wielded flails to restrain the undead. All of them were muscular and extremely durable. They roared at the holy light, raised their clubs, and began to charge, regardless of whether it was an NPC or a player. They basically relied on their physical attributes and rare potions to recover their HP. Among them, water mages and priests were more or less the same. They also had some healing spells, but they were mostly used to speed up the recovery of injuries. After all, their occupation was a mage, and it was not a profession that was specially created to assist others. In William's previous life, there were not many players who were mages. In the early stages of this profession, money was like flowing water. If they wanted to play, they had to rely on luck. They had to at least reach a certain level before they could rely on enchanted weapons to earn money. However, powerful mages were all in high demand. Everyone loved them, as long as they gave them free magic. Lord, it seems that your injury has almost recovered. The two elves guarding the treehouse saw him walk out and respectfully bowed and patted their chests. No matter how much they disliked William in their hearts, they would never do anything impolite on the surface. Yes, I should be fine. How is the development of the territory recently? William glanced at the two elves. Norton and Knox, two pure-blooded Blackleaf elves. They were his personal guards. They were level 40 middle-level professionals and were about 10 levels stronger than ordinary personal guard. The most important thing was that they had a Grandmaster bloodline and had a good attribute bonus. As for why he could see their attributes at a glance, he was only level 8. Because they were his soldiers. As long as they were loyal to him, he could look at whoever he wanted. As for the others, he could just use his insight to look at them. The combination of the NPCs and players gave William a great survival advantage. Norton and Knox looked at the Lord in surprise and shook their heads. Ever since you planned to rebuild the town, many people have fled. The current development situation is not very good. Do you need me to find Executive Lautner? He was originally in charge of the matters in the territory. Ahem, now that I've realized that the town is doing well, it's not time to rebuild it. Why don't we develop it well and organize a few hunting activities? We can get some magical beast fur to sell in the human nations. We can also earn a lot of gold coins. Bring me to see Uncle Lautner. I don't know what happened, but after falling from the tree, I seem to have injured my head. Some of my memories have become very blurry. I've even forgotten where Uncle Lautner is. William pretended to touch his head. Norton nodded. He thought to himself that after falling like that, his head seemed to have recovered. The town was not too big. There were only 3,000 people in the town, so it was not that big. As for the buildings, most of them were tree houses built by people relying on huge trees. If not, they were wooden houses built by cutting down trees. The structure was simple and the defense was not good. After all, this was a subtropical area, so there was no need to worry about keeping out the cold. In the entire town, other than his tree house that was enchanted, the other buildings were very ordinary and simple. Especially after his cheap father disappeared, many civilians and soldiers had taken away a lot of things when they moved. There are 1,000 things waiting to be done. When I reach level 10, I should quickly change my occupation to become a beginner professional. In his previous life, William had chosen the human race, and he had been a warrior who fought to the end. Although he had not found a hidden occupation in the early stages of the game, there was always a chance of survival for the unlucky. After working hard for a few years, he finally grasped the opportunity and changed his occupation to a hidden occupation. Otherwise, on the path to becoming a legend, he could only work hard until the end and rely on his equipment and attributes to complete the mission. As for why he was called an unlucky, his luck points in his previous life and in this life were both 3. Wasn't this proof? This was an unlucky inheritance. This inheritance, which even time and space could not erase, made William so touched that he wanted to cry. After walking for 3 to 4 minutes, William finally saw Uncle Lautner. He was his mother's former personal guard, and now the town's executive officer. He was also his life mentor. Any physical profession would need to train their chi. Just like any mage profession, they needed to meditate magic. When he reached level 10, he could learn battle energy or be a mage. Then, he could choose an occupation that he liked. and Lautner's attribute panel made William very happy. He did not expect that there would be such an extremely valuable expert in his territory. Name: Lautner race, Blackleaf elf occupation, Demon Hunter Ranger level, middle level professional bloodline potential, epic level 52 basic attributes plus 39. 2%, level 52 endowment, middle level life 1 physical strength equals 40 health points endowment, middle level speed 100 agility plus 10% critical hit damage plus 20% attack speed and movement speed endowment. Investigation: I can easily see the enemy's weakness. When attacking the weakness, plus 20% critical hit damage. Endowment: health points 15300 endurance points, 3500 battle energy points. What is endowment? This is called endowment. William could not help but want to complain, but he ignored him. Then, with tears in his eyes, he said, "Uncle Lautner, thank you." Especially when he said those words, he wanted to hug Lautner. Seeing this scene, Lautner felt slightly relieved. He had already heard from Sia that William Blackleaf seemed to have hurt his brain, but he was much more polite than before. So, he looked at William with a caring gaze and said slowly, "It's okay, it's what I should do. Also, you should call me Executive Officer, not Uncle Lautner." William wiped away a few drops of tears that did not appear. He pursed his lips and said stubbornly, "No, Uncle Lautner is my uncle for life. Not only are you my executive officer, but you are also my teacher. Although I have forgotten many memories, I know that you are the best to me in this world. Ahem, let's see how the territory develops first. If this continues, the territory that your father left for you will probably disappear from this continent." Lautner was slightly embarrassed, but he was satisfied with being licked. He had watched this little guy grow up, and he finally knew how to respect him. It seemed that hurting his brain was a good thing. "But why do you keep touching my biceps?" Lautner did not know what to say. He did not know that William was full of indescribable love for an NPC with an epic bloodline, as well as the feeling of his muscles. Chapter 5. The two of them walked in the small town. When the commoners saw them, they would respectfully greet them as their lord. As for what this group of people was thinking, that was something that could not be determined. Gods was a game. However, the amazing thing about the game's mainframe was that every NPC was unique. Each of them had their own independent thought process, and each of them had their own lives, ideals, and families. Hence, one could not imagine that William would be able to enjoy his position after inheriting the position of Lord. The others were brainless and were loyal to him. After all, they were all clever. They were as quick-witted as humans and dogs. They were not good people. Even the children of normal NPCs would fight for food and toys. In the early stages of the game, most of the players were within the borders of the duchies. If the princes were not careful during the battle for the throne, they could trigger a main storyline mission. He still remembered the main storyline mission of the legendary continent version 1.0. It was the battle between the Iron Duchy and the Black Lava Duchy. The cause was because the king of the Black Lava Duchy had died. The princes fought for the throne, causing the Iron Duchy to invade. In the end, a year-long war had started. There were too many power disputes. If they were not careful, it was easy for the players to lose their lives. But the players could revive, so they were never afraid. There were thousands of paths, but there was only one path to death. Hence, the players chose this only path. It was common for them to die from 1,000 miles away. One word: reckless. There would definitely be fighting monsters in the game, but the monsters would only drop materials. There would not be a tiger boss that would drop a weapon or armor. When the players killed monsters, they could only obtain teeth, fur, internal organs, and so on. They could choose to sell the materials or forge equipment. When the game had just started its beta testing, there were not many players. In the first version, there were only a few 100,000 Huaxia players. The game's AI threw all of them into the Iron Nation and the Black Lava Nation without any explanation. Even the border towns next to the two duchies were thrown into many players. But although the first version lasted for a year, this was the game time. In the real world, there were only 3 months. In his previous life, William seemed to have sensed the war between the two duchies and wanted to gain some benefit. The result was obvious. He had not even managed to survive for half a year before he was crushed by the Iron Duchy. His head was hung under the waterfall to rest in the shade. In his previous life, some players who passed by could admire the heroic skull of this lord up close. Even though he had many pure-blooded elf guards with high-grade bloodlines, and even a demon hunter ranger with an epic bloodline like Lautner, they were still no match for him. That's why I say, build high walls, accumulate food, and slowly become king. William Blackleaf sighed as he looked at the flourishing buildings in his territory. What did you say? Lautner scratched his ear as if he hadn't heard clearly. It's okay. How much is left in the granary and treasury? William's mouth twitched as he changed the topic. There are more than 30,000 kilograms of food left in the granary, most of which are rice and wheat. There is also a lot of salted meat, about 12,000 kilograms. As for the treasury, do we have a treasury? Lautner said tactfully. William Blackleaf was shocked. This is a small town after all. We don't even have a treasury? Lautner nodded awkwardly. Indeed we don't. The town's income has always been poor. When your father was in power, there was still an iron mine for the original residents to mine. But now that the iron mine has been mined out, no other mineral resources have been found. It's good enough that the town's finances haven't reached the red line just by relying on the hunter's meat and the taxes from the humans' farming. William's mouth twitched. He really wanted to say that they hadn't looked seriously, right? He vaguely remembered that the Iron Duchy and the Black Lava Duchy had attacked the border town not only to eradicate it, but also because they had found many rare mineral veins in the Blackleaf Forest south of the town. It could even be said that the forest south of the border town was a huge supermine. The most important one was the mithril mineral veins that had been discovered early on. He even thought that this might be the reason why the border town was completely destroyed. Sigh, let's not think so much. Uncle Lautner, do you have time? Why don't you go hunting with me in the mountains and relax? William knew the location of a mineral vein. It wasn't too far away, but he couldn't say it directly. The other side could only use hunting as an excuse to lure him out. As for the mithril mineral vein, now was not the time, it had to be said. Ever since he had the attribute panel, he could also check his loyalty. His mother didn't need to worry about the candidates for mining. That's good too. Seeing that you've been lying in the house for so many days, it's time to train. Go back and prepare a weapon and a bow. It's best to wear the inner armor that your mother left for you. Be careful of accidents. Lautner didn't think too much about it. After all, William used to love hunting, especially that kind of ordinary prey. That's a good idea. There are thousands of ways to seek death, but safety comes first. William returned to his treehouse and rummaged for a long time. Finally, he found a weapon and equipment in a box. A white quality sword. A curved bow of the same white quality. The attributes of the equipment were very bad, so it wasn't worth mentioning. Moreover, William hadn't changed his occupation, so he couldn't use good weapons. But the last inner armor. William couldn't help but admire it. The soft mithril inner armor was covered with the patterns of the world tree. Silver and gold light shone faintly. Without looking at the attributes, he knew that it was a treasure. Blessing of love quality. Epic level. None type. Can grow defensive equipment material. Mithril, branches and leaves of the world tree, adamantine, etc. Producer. Alice Blackleaf Health. Plus 300 endurance. Plus 100 power. Plus 6 physical strength. Plus 10 agility. Plus 8 intelligence. Plus 5 durability. 450 weight. 0. 3 kg defense. Within the protection area of the inner armor, attacks below 110 points will not be able to cause damage to the inner armor and the user. Attacks that exceed this limit will cause effective damage and reduce the durability. Elemental protection. Any elemental damage will be reduced by 10%. Blessing of Love. Passive. When the user's health drops below 10%, he will receive the Blessing of Love. Instantly recover 50% of his health. Cooldown of 3 hours. Usage requirement. William Blackleaf usage requirement. 20 points of power growth requirement. Place 1 kilogram of mithril on the inner armor and it will automatically absorb and evolve. Introduction. This is an inner armor made by a mother for her son. Not only does it contain great maternal love, but it also contains a mother's good wishes. Treasure the inner armor in your hands, child. William Blackleaf sat on the ground in a daze. He held the inner armor with both hands, not knowing what to do. At this moment, he realized. So it turned out that his mother in this world cared for him a lot. As for the William in his previous life, he had died in a chaotic battle. He must have been courting death. Otherwise, even if the sky collapsed, his mother, Alice Blackleaf, would probably come to help him. Maternal love is great. If there's a chance. William shook his head. He was still too weak now, so he couldn't think too much. He could only survive until the end. Chapter 6. 500 handsome and beautiful pure-blooded elfin guards. This was his foundation and his trump card. Among them, there were 100 elfin rangers, elfin warriors, elfin knights, elfin hunters, and elfin magic swordsmen. There were also 10 mages. Sia, who had come to see him previously, was a beginner mage. Among the 500 guards, the elfin magic swordsmen were the strongest. They were all warriors who had almost reached the intermediate level. They were only slightly lower than Knox and Norton. William knew how to use these people. Since we have to enter the Blackleaf Forest to hunt, let's do something else along the way. Knox, go and mobilize 300 guards. We will search for the wild beasts near the town and eliminate any threats. William Blackleaf walked out and said to Knox, who was at the door. At this moment, he was wearing a slim-fitting elfin leather armor, with a long sword hanging at his waist and a wooden bow on his back. Not to mention the quality of the equipment, just the appearance alone made elfin equipment more attractive. Basically, equipment with a little bit of quality would have some additional attributes, for example, charm. It seemed that in the entire God's continent, only the elves and the winged race would add various kinds of charm to their equipment. Especially the elves, there was no limit to the increase in charm. Yes, my lord. Knox nodded in response and ran in the direction of the military camp. When William and Lautner met up, 300 elfin guards arrived in front of them in time. Among these guards, there were 100 warriors, 50 rangers, 50 archers, and 100 magic swordsmen. As for the knights, they did not need to appear. This was not the plains, but the Blackleaf Forest. The knights were far from being able to use their full strength in the forest. One had to pay attention to common sense when playing games. They could fight on horseback, but they needed to be agile and strong magical beasts, not horses. My lord, you call this hunting? No matter how I look at it, you want to start a war. Lautner held his forehead. Seeing the fully armed soldiers, he felt a little confused. William shook his head. Instead, he looked at the neatly lined-up elfin soldiers in front of him. He could not help but feel a sense of pride. They were indeed pure-blooded elfin warriors. No matter what level they were, in front of military discipline, everyone's actions were almost the same. So, he took a deep breath and ignored the doubts of the passing civilians. He shouted awkwardly, "My soldiers, I am your Lord William Blackleaf. Maybe you don't like following me, but I know that you are the best and most outstanding warriors. When I first came to this territory, I may have given you a bad impression. However, I have reflected on myself while resting these past few days. I know I did a lot of things wrong. So, I decided to change and seriously develop this territory of the border town. These words were not infectious at all. Many of the people in the territory opened their mouths wide, so wide that they could swallow a whole hot dog, but William did not care. He was a legendary NPC, and the defense value of his face was high. He paused for a moment before continuing, "If the town wants to develop, then it can't do without money. I know that the territory doesn't have much income right now, but I believe that the treasure is in the forest in front of us. Everyone, please come with me and cut through the thorns and thorns for the territory," advancing forward courageously. "Yes, my lord." The 300 elven guards roared in unison. Regardless of whether they were sincere or not, they looked quite scary. After all, cooperating with the Lord's words was a basic requirement for subordinates. William nodded expressionlessly. He unsheathed his sword and pointed it towards the south. "Follow me." "Yes." Lautner looked at William Blackleaf. He felt that this child seemed to have changed into a different person. He used to be silly, but now he had become a little clever. But William did not think too much about it. He was simply encouraging this group of people to be loyal and courageous. If he wanted them to completely submit to him, he still needed many methods. He just had to take it slowly. As for the soldiers in the territory, they were originally half-elves and humans. But after his cheap father disappeared, that group of people ran away the fastest and almost searched all of his belongings. So now, he only had these 500 pure-blooded elven guards. As for the development of the army, now was not the time. He had no money and no food. Even if he sold himself, he would still be able to earn it. They went all the way south, 7 or 8 kilometers away from the town, before gradually entering the lush Blackleaf Forest mountain range. 300 elven warriors could definitely be considered a strong army. Well, at least in this remote corner. After all, according to the small nobles of the human countries, it was already very good to have a few dozen soldiers as guards. Once they entered the Blackleaf Forest, the sky seemed to have darkened. William led the team at the front, and Lautner followed closely behind. He helped to guide the way to the nearest but most threatening orc tribe. As for the 300 elven guards, 50 of them had already spread out. They were the best scouts. They could move like monkeys on the trees and observe the front and back of the large group to prevent accident. At the same time, they were also godly archers. The elven hunters also had to spread out, but they were in groups of 10. They carried bows, arrows, and short swords on their backs. Some of them even carried large bags with large and tough nets in them. These were all used to capture prey. They could also make traps. Other than special items, most of them could be used locally. After all, it was very difficult for NPCs to have space treasures. As for the attributes of the elven warriors and elven magic swordsmen, one was half physical and half physical, while the other was half physical and half agility. The elven warriors held blades that were not overly curved, and they also held shields. They were considered shield warriors. As for the elven magic swordsmen, they held long swords. They could choose one or two hands, or they could choose a long spear. They were considered a very cool special profession. Also, the magic swordsmen had more battle energy. No matter if they were far or near, they could explode with a stronger battle energy sword move. Not long after, 3 elven rangers flew over and simply told the group that there was a small orc tribe 800 meters ahead. The orcs, specters, and devils were all in the dark camp. Humans, elves, and winged people were in the light camp, but they rarely communicated with each other. As for the half-elves, gnomes, dwarfs, and so on, they were in the neutral camp. However, it sounded nice to say that they were in the neutral camp. They usually did not participate in the battles between the two sides because they preferred to take advantage of the situation and seek benefits for themselves. Most of them were in the light camp. Moreover, for a neutral camp like the lord of a small town, they would go wherever there were benefits. They had nothing to do with the chaotic camp. In other words, to put it nicely, everyone called them the neutral camp. But what was interesting was that William actually triggered a mission. Mission: danger near the territory. As a neutral lord of a small town, if you want to develop your territory, you must first protect the safety of the people in the territory. If you bring them safety, they will be loyal to you. If you want to continue developing, you must eliminate or recover all the dangerous races within a 30-kilometer radius. Level A-First Stage: accidentally discover an orc tribe. The cruel and bloodthirsty orcs will never be friends with you. Then kill their men and steal their women. Reward: 5,000 experience. Reward: unexpected information about the mineral vein. When William Blackleaf saw the mission introduction, the corner of his mouth twitched. This was indeed the mastermind of the gods game. It was still so frivolous. But he was still moved because William did not think that he could really accept the mission, and it was an A-level mission. If he could complete it all, the experience would fill him to the brim. He had once looked forward to it, but now it had become real. It was indeed exciting. Then, if that was the case, he no longer needed to work day and night. If he slept and woke up early, his kidneys would become better and better. So he immediately said in a deep voice, "During the succession of the Lord, this orc tribe had ambushed our town. It was also that time that led to the mass exodus of civilians. And the dirty and cruel orcs are our eternal enemies. We must get rid of them in one fell swoop." How many orcs are there in this orc tribe now? There are about 700 orcs. Among them, there are about 180 warriors. According to my observation, no other orcs have gone out to hunt. So now the orcs should all be in the tribe. There are very few guards. If we seize the opportunity, we can get rid of those guards immediately and not leak any information. The Elfin Ranger said angrily. He was obviously very confident in himself. And why did the Elfin Ranger have such blind confidence? Of course, it was because they were really fierce. The combat power ratio of the races in the Gods continent was about the same level. 1 elf equals 1 devil equals 1. 5 half-elf equals 1. 5 winged equals 2 humans equals 2 dwarves equals 4 orcs. As for gnomes, elves of the same level and level could probably fight more than 10 gnomes without using weapons. Oh, there were also the small mermen, who were the most numerous in the entire continent. An elf of the same level and level could probably fight hundreds of them, if the orcs did not have a strong devil alliance, and if the orcs did not have such a strong reproductive power, they would have been wiped out in the previous era with the reproductive power of the gods' races. Gnomes gave birth in a nest, while orcs ran out in groups of 3 or 4. As for the small mermen, have you ever seen fish eggs? They're always popping out of the water. After William knew the number of orcs, he immediately came up with some tactic. Then, he pointed his sword at the orc tribe and began to march. Just when I was about to doze off, you sent me a pillow. For the sake of the mine, I will let down the deep hatred between our races. William licked his lips and strode toward the tempting orc tribe. Chapter 7. There definitely wouldn't be any super-large orc tribes in the border area. Even the super-large elfin gathering place in the Blackleaf Forest was a few thousand kilometers away from the border town. There were only 2 human nations and small and medium-sized gathering places for a few races nearby. The elfin soldiers moving forward were light and almost silent. No matter what profession the elfin was, everyone's movements were extremely careful, but they seemed very relaxed. Because the elfins were the masters of the forest. Any enemy of the same size in the forest was no match for them. Climbing trees was something that they were born with. Otherwise, those pure-blooded elves wouldn't have remembered William falling from the tree as a humiliation. Needless to say, William was also quite angry. He didn't believe that no elfin had fallen from the tree. Did they have to look at him as if he was retarded? Moreover, it wasn't him who fell. The one who fell had clearly returned to the World Tree. Ahem, the Elfin Ranger's archery skills were the most outstanding. They had long climbed the treetops. To them, fighting was to attach the arrows in their quiver with battle energy and shoot all of them. If the enemy hadn't died, they might be able to use their own swords. Under the watch of the Rangers' scouts, the hunters began to carefully dig holes near the orc tribe and inserted sharp thorns in them. Some thin ropes that couldn't be seen were tied between two trees. If the enemy accidentally kicked them, they might be able to smash something. Among them, the super-large iron rack was the worst trap. This was obviously used to catch wild beasts and magical beasts. No matter how thick the orc's skin was, as long as they stepped on it, they would definitely be badly mutilated and their bones would be crushed by the teeth. William could see the attributes of NPCs that weren't too exaggerated and even their health. But other NPCs couldn't. This was an exclusive ability of players, and any race, creature, or animal had their own weaknesses. Before they were strong enough to defend against everything, those weaknesses would be their fatal weakness. This was like a different world. If I slashed your neck because my attack power wasn't enough and your neck was about to break, you would only lose 100 health points, unless this slash didn't break the skin at all. For example, if William shot an arrow on the orc's skin, it would only cause a superficial injury. This was because his strength in pulling the bow was too weak. But if an arrow pierced through the eyes, mouth, skull, and so on, it would be a fatal injury. William, just stand at the back in this battle. I'll protect you. Lautner didn't want him to fight. After all, William's level was too low. According to the normal age of an elf, William was still a child. It doesn't matter. If I don't experience battles, how can I grow? My archery skills are pretty good. William smiled at this. He took out his white quality bow and easily climbed up the tree trunk. It was obvious that he had become a mature elf that would not fall from the tree. Lautner shook his head helplessly. Seeing that the soldiers were ready, he shouted, "Fire!" So. A series of ear-piercing sounds rang out. The elven rangers and elven hunters stood on the tree branches at the same time and fired their first volley. Almost a second after the orcs heard the shout, hundreds of shining arrows flew through the air, bringing with them an ear-piercing sound of air currents. Nearly 80 orcs fell to the ground with their heads facing up. White and yellow brain matter splattered everywhere. This was accompanied by a series of exclamations and angry roars, because many orcs had avoided a fatal blow. After all, the arrows did not have much effect on their simple and crude chest armor. If they did not use enough strength, they might not have been able to cause any damage. But how could the appearance of a group of high-tech headlocks not scare the ordinary orcs? Other than the first volley, the elves on the tree did not wait for the orcs to counterattack and started shooting freely. The dense rain of arrows caused the orcs to scatter all over the ground. There was no effective orc archer to counterattack. If one were to ask which family in the gods' continent was the strongest archer, it would be the pure-blooded elves. Even the half-elves could not compare. They were natural-born godly archers. But what was surprising was that William was here. Many elves standing on the tree branches looked at this lord in surprise. Every time he pulled his bow and shot an arrow, he could accurately shoot down an orc. This was shooting down. Even if he did not kill them with one arrow, he would still be seriously injured. This kind of bow and arrow used by elven children had very weak destructive power. It was good against animals with soft fur and wild beasts, but these were all orcs with thick skin and thick flesh. Orcs with battle energy. How could this kind of bow and arrow penetrate the battle energy shield? But the next scene really made them a little surprised. This Sir Lord was more like a sharpshooter than they were. Every arrow was faster than the one before, and every time, he could hit the eyes of those beastmen. Every critical hit was fatal. Apart from some powerful beastmen with deeper eye sockets, he did not lose a single arrow. But what William wanted to say was that his attributes were really not bad. Moreover, he had played the game for so many years. Coupled with a player's godly skill, insight, how could he not recognize which orc was trash? He only needed to pick those without battle energy. He loved the orcs old, young, women and children the most. He said that he was bullying the weak, but he clearly saw the fierce light in the orc's eyes, and he felt quite happy as he watched his experience increase bit by bit. After all, in this game of gods, players could rely on killing monsters to level up in the early stages. But in the later stages, it was a trap. Without missions, leveling up was as difficult as ascending to heaven. Damn elves, how dare you disturb your grandfather's tribe? I'm going to peel off your skin and turn all your thighs into barbecued meat. An extremely strong orc ran out in rage. He wore a body of heavy armor and had a fierce aura. He was 3 meters tall and held a huge mace. He casually smashed a tree that was as thick as a bowl. William, be careful, it's the orc tribe leader. Lautner was the closest to the tribe. He frowned and shouted, telling William to retreat. Little bastard, don't run! The orc tribe leader roared and rushed out with more than 100 orc warriors. He had never faced an attack from an elven, but the elders in the tribe had once said that after encountering the elves, the most taboo thing to do was to hide. Instead, they had to take the initiative to attack, even if they might encounter a trap. But why was he thinking so much now? He was an orc. He would be finished if he was reckless. Damn elven monkeys, why are they jumping up and down? He looked at the many elves running quickly and shuttling through the forest. He immediately rushed forward in anger. But before they could run more than 100 meters, the beastmen who suddenly fell into the trap started screaming in pain. All kinds of sharp bamboo rafts, barbs under their feet, huge beast traps, and 3-meter-deep pits filled with sharp wood instantly made those beastmen feel like they were about to die. There was no other way. Most elves used this method to deal with small orc tribes. Prepare the trap. Shoot arrows. Infuriate. The orcs stepped into the trap then. The orcs waved their fists angrily. They felt that they had been tricked. But the enemy was in front of them and they were about to catch up. In addition, the anger in their hearts did not subside, so they continued to rush forward. What happened next was, they would encounter a group of well-equipped elven magic swordsmen and elven warriors on the left and right sides of the defense. 100 exaggerated sword auras were suddenly released, toppling a large number of trees and crashing heavily on the ground. Many unlucky ones were smashed beyond recognition. The orcs who had not yet formed a formation, even if some of them used their battle energy to defend themselves, were still easily chopped into meat paste. Dozens of figures were sent flying, dripping with blood. Almost in one round, this group of few orc warriors were left dead or injured. Then, the elven warriors swarmed in and attacked the tribe in full force. There was no other way. The orcs' intelligence was generally worrisome. Not only were they below the average intelligence of the various races in the gods' continent, but they even pulled down the average intelligence of the major races. There was once someone who deliberately cracked open an orc's head. After a series of careful research, it was finally clear that the orc's brains were not only lacking a string, but also a lot of water. Unless there was an orc priest or a wizard, their intelligence was generally similar to that of humans. They would not easily fall into a trap, and these priests and wizards were the strategists of the orc leaders. Under normal circumstances, the priests were responsible for commanding the battle and attacking from the back, while the leader was responsible for leading the troops to charge and break through the enemy lines. As for whether the leader would die or not, anyway, it was fine as long as the priest did not die. He would choose another leader. But for an orc tribe like this with only a few hundred people, it was difficult to produce an orc priest. But sometimes there would be deceptive phenomena. That was, the orc leader's intelligence was just a little bit higher, and he suddenly thought that he might have stepped into a trap. Then, through all kinds of unimaginable methods, he coincidentally pulled down the enemy's intelligence. Then, with his long experience at this level, it was not impossible for him to defeat the enemy. Chapter 8. When the elven magic swordsman took the lead and charged into the orc tribe like a torrent of steel, this small-scale war had basically ended. Hatred between races, enemies between camps. Most of them would not leave any enemies alive, be it young or old, male or female. As long as the orcs had hair on their bodies or fangs in their mouths, they would die a terrible death. Unless they could use this group of orcs to turn them into slaves. Of course, there was once a powerful orc hero who shouted the slogan that orcs would never be slaves, causing a war between humans and orcs. But it was actually useless. This group of orcs was not that strong-willed. With their intelligence and bear-like appearance, as long as they were starved for a few days and whipped a few times, they would basically become obedient slaves. Although they shouted that orcs would never be slaves, it was a different matter if they were provided with food and lodging. Although there were some who would rather die than submit. But after killing them and hanging their heads in the houses of other orcs, the whole world would be peaceful. Although after becoming slaves, they would still resist from time to time. But most of the orc slaves were basically minors. Otherwise, they would be excited to watch the bloody scene in the arena for the nobles. It was very difficult for a large-scale orc rebellion to cause the destruction of a human country. Because such a thing had happened before, the humans had a long memory. Oh, it was that guy who shouted that orcs would never be slaves, but William had not found a mine yet, and he was too lazy to let the orcs mine. It was better to let his soldiers fulfill their wish and kill all the orcs in the tribe to increase their favorability. William Blackleaf jumped down from the tree. When Lautner saw him, he stopped sweeping the battlefield for corpses that might be faking their death. He walked over and smiled. The results are good. No one was injured. Only a few rangers were accidentally grazed by arrows. Very good. Did you get anything? Lautner pointed at the orc corpses. Oh, look at these orcs. They actually have simple armor. I'm very surprised. Especially that orc leader. I actually pulled out 40 kilograms of armor from his body, but I didn't feel tired at all. They must have found some iron ore. You have to know that our warriors have good equipment because they brought it out of the Blackleaf Elf Kingdom. The iron mines near the town have all been mined out and sold to the human nations. Plus, when the deserters left, they also looted the warehouses. That's really good news. Is there anything else? William looked around, and Knox ran out of the tall tent with a smile on his face. He raised a shiny black object and shouted, "My lord, it's iron essence used to make superior, blue armor. There must be an iron mine nearby, and there's also a treasure chest with 130 gold coins, more than 500 silver coins, and more than 3,000 copper coins." Very good. William smiled and nodded. With iron ores and ready-made gold coins, the financial crisis had temporarily come to an end. Mission: clear out the danger near the territory and the orc tribe. The first part of the mission has been completed. Reward: 5,000 experience points. Reward: a medium-sized iron mine near the orcs. Instantly, William rose to level 9. He had 4 free attributes and 1 skill point. Of course, he kept these for now. He was not far from level 10. After all, he had personally killed many orcs. This game did not have archery proficiency. To shoot accurately, one had to rely on aiming. Just like FPS games, one had to rely on practice and talent. As a top casual player in William's previous life, it was impossible for him to only know the skills of his occupation. Although he was a warrior, it did not mean that he could not use other weapons. As long as the attributes were enough, a warlock could also hold a sword in one hand and a magic staff in the other, charging forward with a knight. After all, Gandalf's greatness, no matter how many hundreds of years had passed, had always influenced the warlock players in the game. Which warlock did not have a good treasure sword in their hands? It was simply a disgrace to the entire warlock community. As for how many warlock players would add points to their strength, this, the benevolent see benevolence, and the wise see wisdom. Warlocks who could pick up a dark gold longsword of the same level had basically added a lot of points. And what was the combat power of these warlocks who added points to their strength? Don't say. They were really not weak. Those who dared to play like this were either extremely lucky or rich. Meeting such players, it was necessary to make friends with them. In the future, it would be safe to follow them and have a good life. But like William, as a warrior with a hidden occupation in his previous life, to be so proficient in archery, it meant that he once had this talent. Of course, practicing archery was unavoidable. Not only did he have to shoot fast and many times, but he also had to shoot accurately. Everyone would know after more practice. But it was difficult to learn the shooting skills of different occupations. Even if they learned it, it would be a waste of experience. Back then, he had only learned a few high-level archery skills. Because he did not want to waste them, he chose to practice archery hard. Very coincidentally, he was born with a pair of nimble fingers, very nimble furthermore. Which legendary player, if he did not know a few skills of other occupations, would he still be called legendary? Many occupations, many elements, many directions to develop. This was the charm of this game. As long as the attributes were enough, a mage could wear heavy armor and charge as a knight. A warrior could also hold a magic staff and throw fireballs. In the middle and late stages of the game, the battle scene was exciting. When the cavalry charged in large numbers, the first attack was often not a sword energy cover. Instead, it was various kinds of magic cannons, followed by various kinds of magic spells, arrows, muskets, and long-range attack. This was the life and death battle of the cavalry. As the elfin warriors removed all the equipment of this group of orcs, they dug a pit and put the corpses into the ground to prevent them from rotting and causing a plague. Only then did this battle come to an end. William nodded happily. Everyone put down the equipment. Although this battle was not considered difficult, all of you performed very well. Everyone will be rewarded with 1 silver coin. Those who are injured will receive an additional silver coin. Thank you, my lord. The elfin warriors were delighted. They did not expect this stingy lord to be so generous. He directly gave everyone a silver coin. He was very generous. Immediately, they patted their chests with their right hands and bowed slightly to show their respect. How real the elves are, bowing when there is a reward. William sighed in his heart and continued. All right, but the reward will be announced when we return to the town. Now, form a small team of 5 and spread out to find the iron mine that belongs to us. Yes, my lord. The elfin soldiers spread out in an orderly manner. Without any command, they naturally formed small teams of 5 and scattered into the forest. The value of iron ore was very high. Although there were rare veins of mithril, adamantine, purple gold, orichalcum, and all kinds of colorful gemstone veins in this world, iron, copper, and aluminum ores were still the main veins of the gods' continent. With these iron ores, the problem of repairing the equipment of the elfin warriors could be easily solved. If they could find a lot of adamantine, they could also upgrade the good equipment to excellent equipment. The normal classification of the equipment. Normal, white, excellent, black, excellent, blue, excellent, silver. Then there were the awesome equipment with various attributes, skills, special effects, and so on. Gold, dark gold, epic, legendary, and even equipment with divinity. Of course, there would also be some special growth equipment. Chapter 9. At sunset, the sun above their heads had already disappeared into the forest. The sky had completely darkened. The weak moonlight had no effect in the depths of the forest. But to the elves, this was really not a threat. Even the warriors who were searching for the mines outside would not get lost like this. Every time they went out, they would bring 3 days' worth of supplies, especially for such a large-scale operation. And night vision was the ability of most races in the gods' continent, except for humans. But there were strong and weak ones. Of course, as human professionals gradually became stronger, night vision was no longer a problem. At this moment, William could make use of a small amount of starlight to see things that were more than 10 meters away. He was sitting on a tree branch, staring at a monkey that knew how to salute. Needless to say, when he saw the monkey, he remembered, although there were buildings and many tents of the orc tribe beneath his feet. But the elves would definitely not choose to live in such a dirty place. They would rather lie on the tree and sleep than choose to live in the tents that smelled of feces and urine. There was no fragrance here, as the Lord, William naturally did not need to search for the iron mine himself. This kind of thing was enough for his subordinates to do. The leader opened his mouth and his subordinates ran all over the place. This was the happy life of a lord. Only Lautner and Knox accompanied him. Knox was his personal guard, and his strength was not bad. He was also a magic swordsman. He was tall and had a valiant aura. He was one of the few strong and muscular elves. In particular, he did not like ordinary long swords. Instead, he preferred to carry a hooked scimitar. He could hook the enemy over and then jump and slash violently. His hobbies were strange. William could not imagine. The characteristics of the elves were very simple. They said one thing and two things. They would never retreat during a war. They could not help but feel very proud of any race. Even if the enemy was very fierce, very strong, or even more handsome than them, this was impossible. Anyway, the elves would always raise their heads proudly and look at the enemy with their nostrils. They would use their eyes to tell the enemy, "I may not be able to defeat you, but I can endure to death. I can endure to death your son, your grandson, your great-grandson, until the moment you die without descendants." There was no other way. Their arrogance lay in their appearance, lifespan, and strength. Their words and even their actions were very similar to the human nobles. But they did not have as many mortal etiquette as the nobles. They had a more natural feeling. Of course, said they looked like royalty. When the humans were ruled by the elves, the so-called nobles were imitating the behavior of the elves. William didn't know how much time had passed, but he fell asleep while leaning against a tree branch. With a call, Lautner woke him up. Two elven rangers walked over and patted their chests with their left hand. They said proudly, "My lord, our team has discovered an iron mine. The other three are guarding over there. We'll report back first." "Good, very good. The 5 of you will be rewarded with 10 silver coins each." "Thank you, my lord." The elf squad leader bowed in greeting. Money was such a good thing. Of course, they were still arrogant and expressionless. It was only natural for them to bow. For ordinary civilians, 5 copper coins was enough for them to live happily for a day. During the day, they could eat 4 pieces of black bread, which were crunching hard, but could be dipped in water to eat. If they were more extravagant, they could buy a glass of terrible whiskey with the other copper coin, and they could sleep soundly until dawn. If you're saving some, 3 coppers for 3 loaves of black bread. He could still keep 2 copper coins, as William Blackleaf's personal guards. This group of pure-blooded elves would definitely not live such a hard life. Elves were very thrifty, and even the worst food could be eaten elegantly. But when these personal guards left the elven city, they were used to living a good life, and each of them brought a lot of wealth. In particular, William couldn't be too stingy. The better he treated them, the more loyal they would be. After all, at critical times, they are the dogs that can help me. The reason why William wasn't very popular back then was that he was too stingy. Of course, it could also be related to his nature. He was poor, but now he had obtained a lot of gold coins. Although he didn't know which unlucky fellow the orcs had robbed, these gold coins were definitely a large sum of wealth for him. And he always remembered that wealth represented numbers. Only by sharing wealth could he obtain intangible and tangible result. It seemed that loyalty was intangible, but it was definitely useful at critical times. A lord that was too stingy would not be able to achieve great things. "You guys should rest too." "Oh right, are there any orcs guarding the mine?" William suddenly asked. "No, but we found the footprints of a giant wild bear at the entrance of the iron mine, so we didn't act rashly. We just let the other 3 stay there to prevent any accidents. Giant wild bear. William raised his eyebrows. They were really going to hunt. It was no wonder that these orcs were not guarding the mine. It turned out that the hole that had just been dug had been used by the giant wild bear as a nest. This kind of giant bear, which was born as a middle-level magical beast, was not weak. Not only was its skin rough and thick, but its strength was also extremely great. Basically, whoever it slapped would die. It was an existence even more reckless than the orc. And this kind of giant wild bear also knew earth magic. Its various tricks were very annoying. In the early and middle stages, when players faced this kind of difficult giant wild bear, they basically used their lives to pile on it. In particular, there was a certain chance that it could grow into a high-level magical beast. If it really was a giant berserker bear that was close to becoming a high-level magical beast or had broken through the upper limit, without Lautner, even if these 300 elven warriors could kill it, they would suffer heavy losses. So it was definitely a smart choice for the orcs to give up on the iron mine, or they had already suffered. Lautner grasped the longsword at his waist and asked doubtfully, "Did you find out what level the giant wild bear was?" "I don't know, but looking at the footprints, it should be as big as my armor." William Blackleaf pondered for a while and asked, "Uncle Lautner, can you kill it in a one-on-one fight?" Lautner's mouth twitched. "It might be a giant wild bear that will become a high-level magical beast. Let's not fight it in a one-on-one fight. I'm so handsome and mighty. If I bully it, my subordinates will gossip." William glanced at him and nodded. Being an epic-level professional did not mean that he was invincible. Lautner was still considered young among the elves. Even the people who followed William had just entered their youth. They were all very young and had not fully grown up. They had great potential. Furthermore, Lautner had an epic-level bloodline, but he did not have the power of an epic level. He had not fully unleashed the potential of his epic-level bloodline. Just like William Blackleaf, he had a legendary-level bloodline. In the eyes of players of the same level, he was a legendary-level boss. Because in the eyes of players, there would be a legendary-level symbol next to him. In terms of attributes and various bonuses, he was really a legendary-level boss among the NPCs of level 9. Furthermore, he had the exclusive symbol of a legendary-level boss. If he was killed, he would drop an epic-level growth inner armor (MMP). But in the world of gods, ordinary, elite, chief, grandmaster, epic and legendary bloodlines represented potential, talent, and bonuses. They did not represent levels. Players and NPCs had different views. After all, players were more concerned about bloodlines. They were not too interested in levels. If the levels were too high, they would not be able to defeat them. They could only lick their boots. And the bonuses of every level of NPC's bloodline were as follows. Beginner level plus 0. 1%. Level 10, 39 belonged to the beginner level. Intermediate level plus 0. 2%. Level 40, 69 belonged to the intermediate level. Advanced level plus 0. 3%. Level 70, 99 belonged to the advanced level. Grandmaster plus 0. 5%. Epic plus 0. 7%. Legendary plus 1%. In terms of the overall level of NPCs, every level increased the basic attributes by a percentage. For example, William Blackleaf was now level 9. That meant that his basic attributes had increased by 9%. It could be stacked all the way to the upper limit of level 100. From then on, when he leveled up, his bloodline would not increase his attribute. But when a legendary level rose to level 100, his attributes would double. Conclusion: legendary bloodline, super awesome. And based on the lifespan of this giant wild bear, even if it was not an adult, its level was still higher than Lautner's. If it was too much higher, it would definitely be stronger than Lautner. In short, magical beasts were much stronger than intelligent creatures in terms of their basic health points and basic attribute. Then let's prepare well. Tomorrow morning, we'll make more knockout potions, but not fatal poisons. Of course, we'll also have various traps. Once everything is prepared, we'll deal with it." William could only put his thoughts aside. After all, he had not seen that big fellow, so he could not find out what level it was. Chapter 10. The towering mountains of the Blackleaf Forest became gentler from west to east, except for the snow mountain of the East Sea. The trees grew more and more luxuriant. There were many races and animals living in this endless forest. Among them was the most mysterious and prosperous Dark Night City, where the Blackleaf Elven royal family and their people lived. Of course, there would definitely be many giant dragons in the huge forest. And the mountain that separated the border town from the sea, William called it the Sea-Separating Mountain. Because this mountain was not very tall, it separated him from the sea, so he simply gave this mountain a name. He knew what was near the sea, and he also knew that there were countless mineral resources and treasures in the sea. Although there would often be some small mermen near the beach, after getting rid of them, the coastal waters would bring him enough benefits. At least it could enrich the food on the tables of the commoners in the territory. There were some countries near the sea in the eastern continent, but not many. Basically, the south was blocked by the Blackleaf Mountains, and it was difficult to obtain marine resources. Only some countries in the east and west could get close to the sea. But most countries did not have the idea of relying on the sea. According to their thinking, the land was the place for them to fight for hegemony. Usually, they used the coastal waters and rivers to transport resources. Even in the eyes of many nobles, other than fish, everything in the sea was too scary. How could it be eaten? But ordinary fishermen did not care about this. They even secretly thought that it was best if this group of bastards did not eat it. The morning sunlight shone into the forest, forming a warm ray of light. The sunlight that dotted the fallen leaves was like a golden lump, full of temptation. All the elves had returned. They did not encounter any accidents. This was not the depths of the forest, and it was very difficult to encounter such strong magical beasts. It was a coincidence that they were able to find the giant wild bear. William did not immediately lead his men to attack the giant bear. Instead, he rested for 5 hours. After eating dry rations, he brought a large group of men to the iron mine. After meeting the 3 elven rangers stationed here, William found out that the giant bear did not come out to hunt, but had been sleeping inside. He touched his chin, deep in thought. Lautner found the extremely exaggerated footprint. He pondered for 2 seconds. For now, I can't be sure if it's a middle-level or high-level magical beast. But as long as we are prepared, we can definitely defeat it. It's just that there might be some casualties. It's best to make sure that nothing goes wrong. I don't want the warriors to be injured or killed. William shook his head. The other elfin warriors looked at him but did not say anything. "It's just spring, isn't it?" he suddenly asked. "That's right." "Why?" Lautner replied. William Blackleaf narrowed his eyes. "Is it possible that the giant raging bear is about to give birth? Logically speaking, bears conceive in autumn and give birth in early spring. The laws of the gods' continent hiss if that's the case, things will be much easier." Lautner did not consider whether it was cruel to kill a pregnant female bear, nor did the other elves with burning eyes. In this world, the strong preyed on the weak. In ancient times, the elves who ruled the continent understood this principle. They could be kind, even very kind, but the premise of everything was that their race was sufficiently safe. It was also because of their excessive tolerance that the other races grew stronger and caused the elves to completely withdraw from the continent. This was still fresh in their memories. If this giant raging bear really gave birth, then after its strength recovered, the border town would be extremely unsafe. Moreover, this was not an ordinary bear, it was a magical beast. All magical beasts were extremely cruel, and most of them could not coexist with each other. Other than a few methods, this group of magical beasts would devour everything that was not of the same race. Gather a large amount of fainting grass, and use it to make poison or light it up. Dig a trap that is at least 10 meters deep and 5 meters wide, and weave a net that can trap a 5-meter-tall giant bear. We need at least 3 net. Prepare the rest and strive to kill it without suffering any losses." Lautner began to give orders, and the other elves orderly prepared to do what they needed to do. Elven hunters were not the only ones who dug the trap. 150 elven warriors took over this task, because the elven hunters needed to rearrange the giant nets on the spot. As for the rangers, they went around to look for fainting grass and other herbs that were not too poisonous. After all, magical beast meat was very good. If NPCs wanted to grow, other than fighting, they had to eat all kinds of magical food or potions. This would make them stronger, level up. Players could also gain a lot of experience by eating food, but unfortunately, the number of times each food could be eaten was limited. William still remembered that in his previous life, there was a rich player who had obtained the title of God of Cookery from eating. He had even increased his level by more than 80 just by eating. Until the middle of the game, he had never fallen behind the first-rate players. But to achieve the title of God of Cookery, it seemed that he had to eat more than 1,000 types of magical beast meat and more than 5 types of dragon meat. The difficulty was not any lower than becoming a legendary player, or even more abnormal. After all, it was dragon meat. It was really hard to buy a piece of meat with 1,000 gold coins. If an NPC killed a dragon, it was very difficult for players to buy dragon meat or dragon blood from him without a strong relationship. The busy task of digging the pit was carried out in an orderly manner, and it was not disturbed by the giant wild bear. William stared at the pit. No one entered the pit, so he did not know how deep it was. But what Lautner could confirm was that the giant wild bear was definitely inside. He could feel its aura, and according to its hearing, it should be able to detect the abnormality outside the cave. But it did not come out at this moment, which meant that it was very problematic and very troublesome. William Blackleaf could not help but lick his lip. If it was really giving birth, then he could wait. When the time came, he could even tame a giant wild bear. That would be a great help when it grew up. Not to mention riding a dragon, riding a middle-level magical beast giant wild bear on the battlefield would be enough to look down on everyone. Although there were all kinds of mounts for knights, most of them still rode horses. At most, they had a stronger bloodline. If one wanted to form a magical beast knight group, this kind of price could not be supported by the duchy. Only a few nobles could get a magical beast mount. As for the players? In the early stages, other than hunters and summoning mages, the other players could only have very ordinary horses. If they could get a mount of a slightly higher level, it would be like driving a Porsche. They would laugh like a fool. How good could they be as time passed? The entrance of the cave was filled with fainting grass. Even the bows and arrows of the others were dipped in poison. There were 3 incomparably huge pits near the entrance of the cave. The elves with bows and arrows climbed up the trees one after another, waiting for orders. As for the magic swordsmen, they were ready to explode with the most violent attack at any moment. Battle Energy Slash. This was the strongest long-range skill that a level 10 magic swordsman could obtain. It was about 4 meters long. But just as William was hesitating, something happened. A roar sounded from within the cave. It was mixed with an indescribable emotion. He decisively shouted, "Light up the fainting grass and fan the smoke into the cave. If you hear any movement in the cave, immediately retreat." But just as a few elves lit the fire and let the fainting grass release the smoke, the ground shook. "Retreat, leave quickly." Just as Lautner's voice fell, the 5 elves who were fanning the flames had already left. They were the closest and had heard it earlier. Wouldn't it be stupid not to leave? Loyalty did not mean that they would pointlessly die. Following closely behind was a gigantic creature. It rumbled as it ran out of the cave and stood up straight. It had glossy black fur and a pair of eyes that were burning with anger. It was a sight that made people want to look up at it. At that moment, its manic aura soared into the sky. Even the fearless elven warriors felt their hearts tremble. Its pair of pitch-black eyes scanned all the creatures around it. Then, it used its huge palm to extinguish the fire. William narrowed his eyes. Shoot! Chapter 11. A dense rain of arrows descended from the sky, bringing with it streams of light. In an instant, the rain of arrows filled with Do-Chi was about to rain down on the wild bear's body. However, the giant wild bear, which was also filled with magic power, did not show any weakness. With a single roar, dozens of arrows flew out. Only a few arrows with dense combat aura were able to penetrate the wave of air. However, they still weakly fell in front of the giant wild bear. Because the arrows could not even pierce through its fur, they could not cause any damage. This exaggerated hardness of its fur was simply outrageous. As for whether it would lose health points, this game did not make sense. Otherwise, if tens of thousands of players shot arrows at the same time when they were slaying the dragon, wouldn't the giant dragon be bitten to death by mosquitoes? William had long known that this would happen, but he did not give up. The elfin archers on the tree continued to shoot wildly. Arrows filled with battle energy consumed the giant wild bear's defensive magic, because it could not continuously use the giant bear's roar. Among them, William took a white bow and aimed at the giant bear's eyes and shot. Unfortunately, not only did the bear know how to block, it also had magic to protect its body. Could not be penetrated at all. I can probably slack off now. But what was interesting was that this giant wild bear seemed to know that there was a trap nearby, so it did not rush over recklessly. Instead, it looked at William, who was closest to it, and used a rock barb. A rock barb with a radius of 7 to 8 meters suddenly shot out from under William's feet. Lautner, who was beside him, instantly grabbed his shoulder and leaped into the air, throwing him onto a tree. Then, he turned around in mid-air. He took out the shining golden bow on his back and pulled the bowstring. An arrow flashing with silver light suddenly shot out, and he himself borrowed the force of the arrow to elegantly float backwards. The arrow formed a rotating air current in the air, and the exaggerated sound of thunder pierced people's eardrums. Just this one arrow. A huge burst of blood erupted from the giant wild bear's front paw. It raised its paw to block its head. However, no matter how thick its skin and flesh were and how abundant its magic power was, its strength was still greatly weakened after giving birth. The full blow of an epic NPC had already caused its left front paw to be seriously injured, and it did not dare to move easily. The giant rampage bear glared at Lautner angrily. It was hesitating whether it should rush out and kill this group of damned food. However, when it saw Lautner pull out another arrow, it still ran forward without hesitation. But the moment it completely left the cave entrance, 4 elven hunters holding the 4 corners of the giant net dropped down from the top of the cave and instantly covered its head. Just as the other hunters were about to rush over to help, the giant berserker bear once again displayed its ridiculous strength. With just a shake of its body, 4 hunters were instantly thrown 3 to 5 meters away, crashing heavily into a tree. They coughed up mouthfuls of blood, feeling as if their kidneys were about to be destroyed. "Use fatal shot!" William shouted. The elves on the tree pulled their longbows and infused battle energy into their hands and arrows. This was the simplest and most useful skill, infusing 30% of his Do-Chi for 5 seconds would increase his basic attack by 150%. Moreover, this was a skill that had yet to be leveled up. A higher-leveled fatal shot would usually deal twice the damage. Almost in an instant, hundreds of fatal shot arrows landed on the target's body with a surge of battle energy. Streaks of blood splattered in midair. The giant berserker bear, who had just torn apart the giant net, received a second heavy injury. But the giant berserker bear, who was covered in arrows, became even angrier. Its whole body surged with magic, and it frantically ran forward. The ground trembled, and it easily condensed huge rock cannonballs, smashing them towards the elves standing on the tree. Fortunately, Lautner had already informed the other elves that as long as they saw the direction it was condensing magic in, they should not continue attacking. They should immediately jump down the tree and run. Hunting the magical beast was important, but the lives of their personal guards were more important. So it was very obvious. The giant berserker bear's attack was not effective. Instead, its injuries became more and more serious. Just as it wanted to continue using rock cannonballs, its front paw suddenly fell on empty air. Plop! The giant berserker bear, who was running, fell into the barbed trap. Many parts of its body were pierced by the trap, and blood flowed non-stop. The unimaginable pain made it roar incessantly, its voice deafening. The second wave of hunters brought the net up again, but it was blown apart by the giant berserker bear's roar, and a few hunters were thrown out again. It had to be said that being a hunter was really a dangerous occupation, but as long as they could complete the mission, the rewards of being a hunter would not be too small, especially when high-level hunters had the ability to tame magical beasts. The giant berserker bear struggled to stand up, ignoring the holes on its body. It wanted to condense rocks under its feet and climb out. But this was the difference between a large team and a small team of hunters. No matter if it was a player's adventure team or an NPC's adventure team, there would never be enough people. But William was here to start a war. Just as the giant berserker bear lifted its head, the trap was filled with magic swordsmen. Almost at the same time, they waved their long swords. The battle energy blades illuminated the entire trap extremely brightly. Rumbling sounds came from under their feet. William had never seen anyone using battle energy blades in a trap. It was really like bullying a bear. But no matter what, after the giant berserker bear had been baptized by battle energy again and again, its originally shining brown fur had become tattered, and its entire body was covered in blood and wounds. It raised its eyes in despair, and could not help but shed 2 streams of blood tears. It seemed to be yearning, wanting to see its child one more time. The elfin magic swordsmen looked at each other, their hearts filled with pity. Regardless of whether the magical beast was cruel or not, its maternal love would never be wrong. They did not attack a second time, but turned to look at their lord. William walked over under Lautner's protection. He looked at the giant berserker bear that was on the verge of death, and their gazes met. It was only a middle-level magical beast, not a high-level one. Otherwise, this battle would not have been so simple. Even if it was very weak, William realized that one of its eyes was already blind, and the other eye was covered in dirty blood, as if it could not see clearly. He sighed, stretched out his hand, and picked up the little bear cub that had not opened its eyes from the hands of a ranger. It did not have any fur on its body, but it was sleeping soundly. It was obvious that it had not noticed this battle. Then he gave Lautner a look, and both of them jumped into the trap at the same time. William brought the little bear cub to its mother's nose, letting her smell it, and said, "Don't worry, I will let your children live, and take good care of them." Even though the giant berserker bear could not see, it could smell the scent, and it nodded quietly. Then Lautner's sword pierced through the giant berserker bear's head. He gave it a quick death. The ending was perfect. The Lord had won. The middle-level magical beast, the giant berserker bear, was dead. He had obtained the iron mine. He had even obtained 3 little bears that had not opened their eyes, but he did not know why. But it was the first time William had integrated into this world, and he had used his soul to feel the emotions of humans and animals. But after the sadness, why do I feel like laughing? William hugged the 3 little bears in his arms, and he could not help but start to imagine the future. As for why he did not kill the bear and gain some experience to level up, because it was not called ending its pain, but increasing its pain. With his little strength, it was a question whether the sword in his hand could pierce through its fur. After all, he had a bottom line. Chapter 12. Lord, this is a medium-sized iron mine. The orcs only dug a small part of it. The iron content of the iron ore is very high. Most of the iron ore that I saw seemed to contain nearly 30% iron. This is already very good for a medium-sized iron mine. An elfin ranger hurriedly ran over, holding some iron ore as he happily narrated. The other warriors who heard the news couldn't help but smile. That was right. A medium-sized iron mine contained at least millions of tons of iron ore and a lot of iron concentrate. Because the mine was large enough, more holes could be dug. As long as there were enough people, they could dig at least 300,000 tons of iron ore every year. If they refined it into iron themselves, it would be much less, but the price would be more expensive. However, if the iron content was high, the selling price would also increase a lot. At this normal digging speed, it could last for at least a few decades if there were no accidents. Although in the eyes of others, this was a game and iron was not valuable to ordinary players, for an NPC lord like him, it was a very valuable thing. Just by relying on the iron mine, he could earn about 10,000 to 20,000 gold coins a year. 1 gold coin equals 100 silver coins equals 10,000 copper coins. Although the gold coins weren't much, but sustainable production was very important. Moreover, his territory needed a lot of iron. Moreover, he was poor. He could spend tens of thousands of gold coins with a wave of his hand in his previous life, although it would still hurt, but he had too many people to support now. If he wanted to expand the territory and build a larger neutral camp city, even a few 100,000 gold coins wouldn't be enough. A lord and a casual player couldn't be compared. Now that the territory finally has a mine that can make money, go back and choose the people. Immediately start work. Each of you will be rewarded with 5 silver coins. William didn't hesitate. It was just an iron mine. Even if the news was exposed, it was nothing. The 2 neighboring duchies didn't need to send troops to destroy the border town for 10,000 to 20,000 gold coins a year. The border town had been in the neutral camp for so long because of his father. Now it had him and so many pure-blooded elves of the Blackleaf Forest. As long as he didn't easily participate in the battle between the 2 duchies or expose the big treasure, the enemy naturally wouldn't easily make a move. After all, no one wanted to offend the elves of the Blackleaf Forest. Although they didn't know the details of William Blackleaf, they could understand that he, who had 500 elfin guards, was very important in the eyes of the Blackleaf elves. Thank you, Lord. Many elven warriors cheered with joy. Lautner smiled and pointed at the big fellow in the trap, saying, "Then what about this mid-level magical beast? We can't sell its fur. Otherwise, a complete giant berserker bear's fur, not to mention that it's this big, can be sold for at least 1,000 gold coins. If we sell its meat, we can sell it for at least 800 gold coins." William thought for a while and said, "Forget it. This giant wild bear weighs at least 4,000 kilograms, and its flesh is rich in magic. We'll keep it for ourselves. The warriors who came with me will each have 5 kilograms of meat, and the warriors who guard the house will each have 2 kilograms. Thank you, my lord. The glory of the World Tree will forever protect you." This time, the words of thanks were completely different. The elfin warriors instantly had a better impression of William. This kind of item that could increase one's strength was very difficult to obtain. 5 gene of magical beast meat was equivalent to 10 silver coins. However, in reality, it was very difficult to buy precious magical beast meat for 50 silver coins. This kind of reward was very generous to any lord. Moreover, they were not injured at all. Even the soldiers who were left behind to guard the place were not left behind. This definitely showed that the current lord had really changed. At least his character was not bad. However, William still kept the big head. Of course, he did not want to eat as much as he wanted. No matter how delicious a mid-level magical beast was, he would get tired of eating it. As a combination of NPCs and players, although he did not have the upper limit of the number of times he could eat meat, the bear meat that he kept could be used as a reward in the future. To professionals, using this kind of thing as a reward was much more valuable than gold coins. It was also much more cost-effective. After all, William had missions to level up, while other NPCs could only rely on eating, fighting, training and other methods to improve their strength. "My lord, is this little fellow hungry?" Norton was now carrying 3 small bears in his arms. There was only a thin layer of white fur on his body. He could only take off his underwear and wrap it in, afraid that it would accidentally catch a cold and fall sick. If that happened, his sin was unimaginable. "Let's go back immediately. Leave a team of 10 rangers here to monitor and see if anyone else has discovered this mine. When we go back, we will immediately send miners and troops to replace them." William carried one of them. It seemed that it was really hungry and had to go back immediately to get some milk to feed it. Just as he finished speaking, William Blackleaf hurriedly brought his men and horses back. The iron mine was about 7 to 8 miles away from the border town. The distance was not considered close, but it was not considered far either. The main reason was that the mountain road was difficult to walk. If they wanted to empty this iron mine, they had to build a road. Otherwise, they would not be able to transport the iron ore. On the way, when William thought of this, he could not help but have a headache. Cutting trees required money, and so did building a road. However, there were many weirdos and poor people in the border town. As long as there was money, this group of people would do anything. There was no choice. Neutral camp. There were too few good people. Those who could survive here were basically thugs. They either had a blood feud or had wanted posters on their faces. They did not dare to appear in the light camp, so they could only mix in the neutral camp. When his father was still around, he could rely on his own strength to make many criminals quietly work for him and even become soldiers. But once he disappeared, this group of soldiers returned to their original nature the fastest. However, thugs had the advantage of being thugs. They were strong and had high combat power. There were even many professionals. As long as there was great strength and the temptation of money, it was very easy to make this group of people work. 2 hours. A group of troops with armor stained with blood finally walked out of the forest. When they returned to the border town, many idle commoners looked over in shock. They were discussing what kind of magical beast this 5-meter-tall giant bear was. It was definitely a magical beast. No ordinary animal could have such a physique. This is a giant wild bear, a middle-level magical beast. It might even be a high-level magical beast. Someone suddenly said, a hint of passion flashing in his eyes. After all, this was a middle-level magical beast. Its meat was delicious and could increase one's strength by a lot. Oh my God, there are actually bear cubs, and there are even 3 of them. Could it be? A group of people looked at the cubs in William's arms and felt a trace of envy. The cubs that had not opened their eyes yet. The first person they saw when they opened their eyes would recognize them as their master. As long as these 3 cubs grew up smoothly, they would simply be sharp weapons on the battlefield. William walked on the road with a proud expression. He did not care about this group of dishonest commoners. The reason why he dragged out of the forest for 2 hours was that he did not want to dismember the giant bear. He wanted to let them see this big guy, and at the same time show the strength of his personal guards, so that they would not cause any trouble. "Milk, quickly bring milk, I want to feed the bear." "Sorry, Lord, we only have goat milk now." "Goat milk it is. There is very little goat milk. In the future, we will have to go to the Iron Nation to buy it." By Chapter 13. The 3 little bears lay in the cradle with their eyes closed, as if they wanted to find the warmest place to sleep. But it wasn't until a certain larger bear forcefully squeezed into the most comfortable, warmest, and most central position that Bear 2 and Bear 3 couldn't win against, and could only give in, snoring as it slowly fell asleep. William had just fed them goat milk. He stroked the fur of the 3 little bears with his palm. These 3 little babies were not ordinary. He had just tested them. Big Bear had a high-level magical beast bloodline, while second bear and third bear had a middle-level magical beast bloodline. In the early stages of the game, which player did not have high-level magical beast? Even if they had the help of a middle-level magical beast, if they could slowly grow up, they would simply be in high demand for the guild. They could even have a say in front of the small nobles of the duchy. In other words, they had a strong sense of superiority. Although the higher the bloodline level, the slower the growth, as long as there was enough food, magical beasts would grow far faster than intelligent races. William picked up a furry blanket and covered the three little bears. He only exposed his little head to breathe, then quietly left the room. "Take good care of them, I don't want to hear any accidents," William said to the servant standing at the door. "Yes, my lord, I swear I will always take care of these cute little guys." The maid secretly looked at the three little bears in the room. She did not expect them to grow up to become terrifying violent bears, but they were really cute when they were young. "Yes, I will give you an extra silver coin every month as a reward." As a lord, William Blackleaf could not avoid having servants. Moreover, there were many starving commoners who could not even wait to be his servant. Sia, who had long breasts and long legs, stood at the side, looking down and thinking. She seemed to be very puzzled. How did this guy change so much? He had gained a lot from this trip. After destroying an orc tribe, he took the opportunity to obtain an iron mine and 3 magical beast little bears. As long as they opened their eyes 3 or 4 days later, the first person they saw would easily recognize them as their master. Of course, the little bears were also very sensitive to smells. What the servants needed to pay attention to was to not let any accidents happen to the little bears and clean up their feces. As for the rest, whether it was feeding or cleaning, William basically had to do it himself. "Sia, do you like those little bears?" William walked to her side and asked. "Of course I do. What a cute little guy." Sia answered abruptly. "How about I give you one?" "Really?" No, forget it. I can't afford to rear a rampage bear." Sia shook her head hurriedly. She had invested most of her income into magical materials. How could she afford to rear a magical beast? William Blackleaf smiled and said, "Even if you can't afford to raise them, you can come and take a look. Bear-type magical beasts won't easily attack familiar scent. Furthermore, I can command them." "Can I come here every day? What if they accidentally open their eyes and see me?" Seattle asked with her eyes wide open. "It's okay, I'll help you raise it," William said generously. Then, "Thank you, sir." Sia did not know what to say and hurriedly left. William watched as Sia ran away and rubbed his hands. "She's a mage with an epic bloodline. She's definitely an enchanter. My dear mother, you've given me a lot of talents." They even have all kinds of equipment. Name: Sia race, Blackleaf elf profession, intermediate water magician level, 41 bloodline potential, epic basic attributes plus 28%, endowment, intermediate life, 1 physical strength is equal to 40 health points, endowment, light of water, the effect of any water magic will be increased by 30%. 100 intelligence will reduce the cooldown time of water skills by 20%. Endowment: intermediate magic, 1 intelligence equals 1. 2 magic attack power health points, 8,800 endurance points. Magic points: it had to be mentioned that whether it was battle energy or magic points, they were things that could only be obtained by professionals after level 10. At that time, both players and NPCs would be able to learn battle energy secret manuals or meditation secret manuals. The levels were divided into low, intermediate, high, grandmaster, epic, legendary, and so on. In short, the higher the level of the secret manual, the more magic points or battle energy points it would increase. At the same time, it would also have some special effects. For example, increasing the power of skills or activating some kind of battle energy shield. When players looked for NPCs to change their profession, they could usually only learn low or intermediate secret manuals. Advanced secret manuals required more difficult missions, but players could obtain them as long as they were patient. But Grandmaster and above secret manuals required fortuitous encounters, auction houses, special NPCs, black shops, mysterious merchants, and even the private collections of some professional mentors. Moreover, the price of secret manuals was terrifyingly high. Low-level secret manuals only required 10 silver coins. Basically, players who could walk out of the novice village would be able to learn enough secret manuals and skills when they changed their profession as long as they were frugal. But intermediate secret manuals required 1 gold coin. 1 gold coin didn't seem expensive, but for casual players who had just entered the game, it was a fatal blow. If they didn't have a fortuitous encounter and didn't want to spend money, then they could only honestly save money. But in this game, even if they spent money, they couldn't exchange it for gold coins. Other than fashion clothes, there was only fashion clothes sold in the shop. Otherwise, in this era, which game company would dare to sell attributes with the name of a monthly card? How did NetEase go bankrupt? It was because the monthly card sold attributes that the players in the 23rd century went bankrupt and rejected all the games under NetEase. As for fashion clothes, it was obvious that they wouldn't increase any attribute. The only advantage was that they looked good and could be worn on equipment. But the cheapest fashion clothes cost 100 yuan. Of course, fashion clothes could also be sold to some NPC nobles. But this required enough favorability from the NPC, and it also depended on whether the NPC was interested. If an NPC really wanted to buy it, then they could also earn a lot of gold coins. The shop didn't sell revival coins, and this game didn't have a revival profession. After level 30, players could only revive 6 times a day. Every time they died, they would lose a certain amount of experience and even a level. They would also randomly lose equipment. If they died more than 6 times, they would be banned from logging in for 10 hours. Of course, this restriction was only implemented after the players became intermediate professions on a large scale. This was to make the battle between players more balanced, and also to make the world more balanced between players and NPCs. But this was a game after all. The company of the game wanted to make money, and it was also to make money in a healthy way. It was impossible for them to do business at a loss, so they still opened a trading system. It was to use RMB to buy equipment and gold coins. The only ones that still had some control were the clubs. This was because every club would have a guild under them. Players would gather in the guild under the club for their idols. They would often be willing to pay a small amount of equipment or gold coins to help professional players become stronger quickly. The prerequisite was that professional players had to obtain glory. Being scolded like a dog after being defeated wasn't just for show. Chapter 14. Another day had passed. After William Blackleaf had fed the little bear, he had finally reached level 10 after eating a large bear paw. His 4 attributes were +1 free attribute points +4, he had never used his free attribute point. Now, he had 40 free attribute points. If he used all of them on agility, he could reach 80 points in one go. This did not include his equipment and legendary bloodline. But he had been thinking about how to become a professional. It was not difficult for him to find a hidden occupation. Because hidden occupations were everywhere, as long as it was a battle energy or magic secret book that was above the Grandmaster level, it could be considered a hidden occupation. But there were too few powerful hidden occupations. He knew 2 of the powerful hidden occupations of the elves. In the early stages, he had to become a warrior. When his attributes were awakened at level 30, he could go to the main city of the Lion Kingdom and find the hidden legendary elf. He had to drink wine and pretend to have met her by chance. He had to get drunk, at the same time. He had to show that he liked to gamble, scold people, fight if he was unhappy, and other annoying hobbies. He had to let this legendary elf see it so that he would have a good impression of him. Then, he would give a series of demanding tasks. If he could complete them, he would basically be able to become a professional. Magic Sword Sage. This hidden occupation was very violent. But the experience gained from leveling up was doubled. The second was to become a ranger. He would head to the Blackleaf Forest to find a small gathering place for elves. After a series of annoying requirements, he could become a night ranger. This hidden occupation was not the only one. The prerequisite was that his level could not be higher than level 50. The various technical requirements were very abnormal. Even some experts would find it difficult to complete the missions at low levels. As for those who deleted their accounts to become a professional hidden occupation. Sigh, this is a headache. Do I have to find Lautner and become a demon hunter ranger? This occupation is not weak, but it is too targeted. It is not as strong as the magic sword sage. But the ability to train in both swords and arrows is really suitable for me. William touched his chin. He had to choose a suitable hidden occupation. The magic sword sage looked awesome, but he already had one. 5 times the experience. If he learned this occupation, it would be 3 times. This kind of leveling speed would be a nightmare. Forget it, I'll go and become a demon hunter ranger. As long as I have enough talents, hidden occupations are nothing. William did not think about the hidden occupation. As a legendary boss with memories from his previous life, he had unparalleled confidence. 10 minutes later, William found Lautner, who was practicing his martial arts at home. Training was unavoidable. Regardless of whether it was the epic-ranked Lautner or the elven warriors, their daily lives were all about honing their martial arts skills or gorging themselves. The residents of the border town had already mobilized more than 500 people to repair roads and dig mines. They had to pay at least 50 silver coins a day. Among them, more than 100 warriors were guarding them. The rest of the warriors were guarding, patrolling or training in the town. My lord, why are you? Hey, you can finally practice battle energy or magic. If Her Royal Highness knew about this, she would definitely be very pleased. Lautner sighed as he looked into the void. There seemed to be a trace of longing and helplessness in his eyes. His emotions were in a mess. William felt a headache coming on. He felt that there must be something fishy about this guy taking care of him so well. As expected. MMP. He seemed to have a crush on his mother. Unfortunately, the one protecting the princess was a knight, while the one marrying the princess was a prince, of course. His father was not a prince, but he was still a legend. Uncle Lautner, you can just call me William. I've said it many times. No. I'm your subordinate. I can't change the way I address you. Lautner continued. Did you come to me to learn battle energy? Yes, I also want to become a famous devil hunter ranger. Lautner looked at the starlight in William's eyes and could not help but feel a little proud. Then, he patted his shoulder and said, Forget about being a devil hunter ranger. There's a better occupation for you. Why? William was a little confused. Lautner seemed to see that he was a little confused. He took out a beautiful scroll and handed it to him. This is the occupation your mother chose for you. It's very suitable for you. William was a little surprised. There was an unexpected gain? He took the scroll, and his eyes flashed with a bright light. Watchman of Dawn. Hidden occupation. The exclusive occupation of the royal family of the Blackleaf Forest. It was a fighting occupation that leaned towards ranger warriors. William suddenly realized that he seemed to have made a mistake. He was clearly an NPC, but he had to follow the thinking of a player to change his occupation. Wasn't there water in his brain? He had forgotten that he had half of the Blackleaf royal blood. His mother would definitely not forget something as important as changing his occupation. Occupation Inheritance Scroll, Watchman of Dawn Level, Legendary Usage Requirement, Blackleaf Elf Royal Bloodline. Usage Requirement, Bloodline potential must not be lower than epic level. The requirements are not bad. After all, the elves' bloodline potential is very abnormal. There are a lot of legendary ones and epic ones. It's just that without the royal blood of the elves, It's very difficult to learn this top hidden occupation. William did not hesitate and directly tore open the inheritance scroll. The scroll turned into stars and slowly covered his whole body. Finally, it integrated into his body. A piercing pain appeared. William could not help but twitch his mouth. After becoming an NPC, all kinds of pain were 100%. There was no way to weaken or adjust it. But it was still okay. After a few breaths, the inheritance was over. But his attribute panel had undergone a huge change. The first benefit was that all attributes and charm increased by 10. The second benefit was that after level 10, all attributes would increase by 1 and charm would increase by 1 for every increase in level. The original +4 free attribute points would become +6. As expected of the exclusive profession of the Blackleaf Elf royalty, charm would also increase along with the level. The third benefit was the Watchman of Dawn skill tree. The fourth benefit was the Holy Dawn battle energy. The fifth benefit was very common. That was beginner life. Name, William Blackleaf race. Half-elf occupation, Watchman of Dawn endowment. Handsome endowment, beginner life. 1 physical strength equals 20 health points. Bloodline potential, legendary, basic attributes plus 10% level, 10 experience. 8234/8500 age, 16 health. 740, plus 300 plus 200 endurance. 440, plus 100 plus 100 basic attributes were as follows. Power, 44, plus 6 plus 3, physical strength. 37, plus 10 plus 3, agility. 48, plus 8 plus 3, intelligence. 35, plus 5 plus 1, special attributes were as follows. Charm, 53 luck. 3 asterisk the brackets were the equipment and battle energy effects. It did not include the bloodline potential bonus. Holy Dawn battle energy level, legendary level. Level 1, 0/100 experience, battle energy value, 300 points recovery speed, 10 points/second special effect. Any battle energy skill will be increased by 1%. Special effect. Power plus 3, physical strength plus 3, agility plus 3, intelligence plus 1 special effect. Health plus 200 special effect. Endurance plus 100 battle energy protection. The surface of the body can produce a battle energy shield equal to the battle energy value. It consumes 30 battle energy value per second. The basic defense is 100. If the attack power exceeds the upper limit of the defense, the battle energy value can be consumed. If the attack power exceeds the defense by 2 times, the shield can be directly shattered. After the shield disappears, it can be activated again after 5 seconds. Light of Dawn. On a certain battle energy skill, it can add 50% of the battle energy value and increase the attack power by 200%. The cooldown is 30 minutes. Every 5 levels, the attributes, special effects, battle energy value, skills, etc. The attributes added by the battle energy have the bloodline bonus effect. Watchman of Dawn skill tree 3 had been activated. Blessing of the Elf God passive level. Level 1 0/100 experience, skill attribute. Long-range physical attack power increased by 10%. Cooldown. None consumption. None fatal shot level. Level 1 skill attributes. Can shoot 3 arrows in a row. If all arrows hit the enemy, the first arrow will cause x1 20% of strength damage, the second arrow will cause x1 40% of strength damage, and the third arrow will cause x1 60% of strength damage. There is a certain chance of causing bleeding. Cooldown 10 seconds. Consumption 100 battle energy value, battle energy cut level. Level 1 0/100 experience, skill attribute. Swing a sword forward. If it hits the enemy, it can cause x1 40% damage. There is a certain chance of causing bleeding. Cooldown 3 seconds. Consumption 30 battle energy value. Chapter 15. The Watchman of Dawn was also a swordsman. Not only were his skills dazzling, but they were also very powerful. He needed experience to level up his battle energy secret manual. He also needed experience to level up his skills. Especially the legendary battle energy secret manual, the experience needed was too much. It was almost the same as the experience he needed to level up. William had just changed his occupation and did not have much experience left. Even if he could gain experience from eating bear meat, he could not eat too much now. After all, if he ate too much meat, not only would it be greasy, it would also be easy to choke to death. Moreover, as a lord, he had to learn to enjoy life. How could he be compared to the players? Completing the mission was the most important. It was too cruel for him to rely on eating to level up. But he would not be tired of eating dragon meat for a lifetime. Fortunately, he had enough experience to level up his skills. He leveled up his 3 skills by 2 levels each. As a lord, he had to know how to be fair, cough cough. The main thing was that he did not have enough battle energy. If he really stacked a skill to the maximum level, he would not be able to release a skill. It would be very embarrassing when he faced the enemy. Blessing of the Elfin God, passive, level 2 skill attribute. Long-range physical attack power increased by 12% consumption. None cooldown. None fatal shot level 2 skill attribute. Consumption of 130 battle energy points. Can shoot 3 arrows in a row. If all the arrows hit the enemy, the first arrow will cause 130% damage, the second arrow will cause 150% damage, and the third arrow will cause 170% damage. There is a certain chance of causing bleeding. Cooldown 9 seconds. Battle energy cut level 2 skill attribute. Consumption of 40 battle energy points. Swing a sword forward. If it hits the enemy, it will cause 150% damage. There is a certain chance of causing bleeding. Cooldown 3 seconds. In conclusion, it was very strong. There would be more unique skills in the future, especially the fatal shot. Although the requirements were very excessive, William's shooting was really accurate. As for the 40 unused free attribute points, he added 20 points each to strength and agility. The specialty of the Watchman of Elves was that it mainly added strength and agility. In the early stages, it was mostly an archer's skill, but in the middle and late stages, there were also many close combat skills. As for intelligence and physical strength, meat is one of the necessary talents of a legendary boss. Even in my occupation, I can't be too meat, but no matter what, I'm much stronger than an ordinary NPC. As for intelligence, those who practice both magic and martial arts are different. They should be killed. In the blink of an eye, William forgot about the idea of changing his occupation to become a magic martial sword sage. Looking at his own attributes, he couldn't help but praise himself. Lautner patted him on the shoulder and said, "It seems that you are already a mature elf and have already inherited this profession. However, just having a body full of power and not being able to hit people is still not enough. You need to practice more." Understood. William nodded. Regardless of whether it was a player or an NPC, it was not always good to have more skills. Not to mention the problem of not having enough experience. The key was still to rely on one's own strength, combining one's techniques, skills, positioning, environment, and other factors to deal consistent damage. It was even more important to ensure that the opponent would be continuously hit and unable to counterattack. This was the most important thing. There was no skill lock in this game. All skills relied on accuracy and awareness to hit the opponent. Therefore, skills were not the most important. The prerequisite was that you could hit the opponent's weak point. Even a very ordinary skill could cause a lot of damage. "My lord." An elven ranger hurriedly ran in. "Speak." William raised his eyebrows. If there was a war or a territory crisis, no one needed to knock on the door. The elven ranger panted and said, "After the exploration of the scout team, we found another small orc tribe. It is 30 miles southeast of the border town. They are hiding in a cave. The location is very hidden, but we still found them. They have prepared a lot of weapons and equipment. It seems that they are planning to start a war. How many are there? Lautner asked. Currently, we have found 500 people. However, after careful observation, these 500 people are mostly orc warriors. There are also many orc berserkers. They came prepared. It seems that they are taking revenge for that group of orcs? Or did someone escape from the orc tribe that was annihilated and told them about the iron mine? William touched his chin and waved his hand. Gather 5 mages and 200 warriors to prepare for battle. Inform the warriors guarding the mine to be careful. If they discover that the orcs are attacking the mine, retreat immediately. There is no need to fight with them. Yes, my lord. There are many orc tribes in the east of the Blackleaf Forest. If they want to come over continuously, it will be a little troublesome. William was a little depressed. Could it be that the giant dragon in the eastern mountains had started to lose its temper again, causing this group of orc tribes to start to migrate to the periphery? The Blackleaf Forest covered a large area. From east to west, it stretched for tens of thousands of kilometers. Other than humans, many races on this continent had a gathering place in the Blackleaf Forest. Among them, the forests in the central and western regions were all controlled by the Blackleaf Elves. Their sphere of influence covered more than half of the forest. It was also the best location in the Blackleaf Forest. There were many mines in the territory and all kinds of rare animals and plants. Of course, there were also many friendly races. Most of them were protected by the elves or formed an alliance with each other. However, there were also many races in the dark camp in the Blackleaf Forest. However, there were very few demons. They generally liked to build cities in the wilderness without green plants to oppose the humans. As for the orcs, they could live anywhere. Their reproduction numbers had always been high. They were spread across the entire continent. Like ants, they came to a place and built a nest. It was impossible to completely eradicate them. In order to survive, they would even take the initiative to seek refuge with a giant dragon. That was to say, they would desperately hunt all day to feed a giant dragon who only ate and slept all day. Thus, they could live in fear in the giant dragon's territory. There was no other way. In terms of overall strength, as long as it was not a medium-sized orc gathering place or above, their strength was generally very weak. It was very difficult to give birth to orcs with good bloodline potential. Of course, if the giant dragon was in a bad mood, it would also eat a few orcs. As for whether the orcs would resist, this would depend on how the orc leader viewed this matter. And the strength of the giant dragon was divided as follows. As long as it was a giant dragon with pure bloodline, no matter if it was a 5-colored dragon, a metal dragon or a gemstone dragon, the bloodline potential was basically above the epic level. Except for some young dragons that were born to cheat their mothers, for example, dragons that could not call out their real names after being born, or dragons that did not know dragon language magic basically. Except for them, most of the giant dragons with bloodline above the epic level, and the dragon race had once ruled the gods' continent in the First Era. Their strength was unfathomable, and their numbers were not too small. Even if it was the same level, and same bloodline, it was often not something that other races could challenge alone. It was not that there were no dragon slayers, but most of them were in small teams or teams. There were very few existences that could challenge a giant dragon alone, unless he was really ferocious. After all, the dragon race liked to live alone. It was not too difficult to kill a giant dragon. It mainly depended on who the dragon slayer was, and some of the dragon race would have some vassal clans. Basically, as long as they did not stir up trouble everywhere, they could live well. But after all, such giant dragons were still in the minority. Especially the elemental dragons, who were born lowly, most of them were killed wherever they went. As for the dragon beasts, draconic dragons, and even the various magical beasts with the blood of the dragon race, their strength was not equal. Chapter 16. William led the warriors into the forest. With the advantage of the elves' speed in the forest, they arrived at the periphery of the orc warrior gathering place in just an hour. A few elfin rangers walked over carefully and reported the situation. Lord, the orc warriors have increased by another 100 people. They are also transporting various weapons and equipment. It seems like they are preparing to fight with us. 600 people? How many patrolling soldiers do they have? William touched his chin. No one knew what he was thinking. Quite a lot. There are a total of 10 orc teams patrolling, a total of 50 people. Lautner was not worried about the strength of this group of people. If he really wanted to kill people in the forest, he could destroy this group of orcs alone. The prerequisite was that they did not run. Otherwise, it would be very troublesome and waste some time. And William had the same idea. Mission: danger near the territory, a second stage. The situation is very obvious. There is a large orc tribe that intends to compete with you for this iron mine. They also want to completely destroy your town. Get rid of them or get rid of them personally. Mission completion. 0%, 100% reward. 10,000, 50,000 experience reward. Unknown reward. Subordinates' loyalty and affection level. William narrowed his eyes. The second stage of the mission. As expected, the rewards of the Lord's mission started to affect the loyalty of the warriors under him. According to the description of the mission, he could send troops to destroy them or use his own abilities to kill them. This was a very difficult thing for many lords, especially when it was a level 10 lord. But don't forget, he was a legend. Even the weakest legend boss was a legend. William turned his gaze to an elfin ranger captain. Lend me your bow and weapon. Yes, lord. The elfin ranger captain was puzzled, but he was not afraid that the lord would covet his equipment. The elfin ranger captain with bloodline potential was level 33. His equipment was not bad. A blue quality longbow. Attack power 130 to 180 points. A blue quality one-handed sword. Attack power 120 to 160 points. As for the increase in attributes, it was not worth mentioning. As long as it was a beginner's equipment and the attributes were up to standard, he could wear it. After all, legend bosses had high attributes and high health. That was how capricious they were. The weapons and equipment in the game gods did not have a level limit. There were only requirements for level and attribute. If other professionals could pick it up, they could use it. If you wanted, mages could also wear heavy armor, but some special effects might not be used. William, as a lord, you can just shoot arrows from the side. There's no need for you to personally enter the battlefield. Lautner was slightly worried. However, other than the epic inner armor, the legendary boss, whose equipment was extremely low, shook his head. No, the lord should take the lead. Nox, take the others and surround the gathering point. I'll deal with them myself. Don't let anyone escape. My lord, just leave these beastmen to us. The other elven warriors refused. After all, this was a matter of life and death. Although they could see that their lord had successfully cultivated his dochi, he was still young. This kind of behavior was still very inappropriate. They wanted to return to the elven kingdom, but their hearts would not allow them to cheat their lord. Obey my orders. With Uncle Lautner protecting me, all you need to do is surround these guys. William looked at Lautner. Lautner could only nod helplessly. All right, if there is an enemy that can truly threaten you, the bow and arrows in my hands are not to be trifled with. As long as I can eat meat, that's not a problem. But help me bring more arrows. If you see that I don't have any bows, throw me the quiver. The corners of William's mouth curled up slightly as he walked nimbly towards the gathering place of the orcs. At the same time, the 5 elven mages looked at each other and cast various buffs on him. Qingling. Mind spell. Enhance strength. Most buffs could only last for about 10 minutes. The effect was not too obvious, but it was better than nothing. As for the other elves, they spread out and silently surrounded the orcs. Forest. Never start a war with the elves. Otherwise, based on the nature of the humans, even though they knew that the number of elves would increase once again, they wouldn't dare to enter the forest rashly. This was because they knew that in the primeval forest, the elves' battle style could be said to be invincible. It was impossible to guard against them. A silhouette leaped into the bushes like an agile leopard, soundless and without a sound. Even though his speed was very fast and he jumped very high, it was very difficult for him to make a sound. Every time he walked, he could easily avoid the bushes that made noise. He was like a powerful elven hunter, waiting for an opportunity to move in the forest, but he would never expose himself. Lautner saw all of this, and he was a little bewildered in his heart. Could it be? In the past, what he did was all an act for others to see. He even fell from the tree? Only when he became a lord did he completely reveal his true abilities. William gradually approached an orc patrol team. After observing from the tree, the levels of these 5 orcs appeared in front of him. 3 of them were level 20 and 2 were level 15. There was not a single elite. They were all ordinary orc warriors. Then it's very easy. William narrowed his eyes. He took out 3 arrows with his left hand and held the bow. This could reduce the speed at which he took out arrows from the quiver. He took out an arrow with his right hand and pulled the bow to the fullest. The arrow, surrounded by battle energy, shot out. Swoosh! A ray of light streaked across the dark forest. The orc walking at the back did not have any reaction and instantly fell to the ground. Headshot, a fatal weakness. The moment the head was pierced, a fatal injury appeared. The level 15 orc warrior, who did not have much HP, died immediately. 400 experience points were obtained. The 4 orcs in front heard the commotion. They were just about to turn back to look when William took out an arrow from his left hand and pulled the bow to shoot again in a short 2 seconds. 3 orc warriors were shot in the head by him. But at the moment when the remaining 2 orcs took out their weapons and were about to shout, a figure descended from the sky. William, who was in midair, pulled the bow to the fullest and shot an arrow. The orc with its mouth wide open felt a pain in its throat. It covered its mouth and fell to the ground. As for the other orc, who was dumbfounded, before he could retaliate, William, who was still in midair, pulled out a long sword from his waist and struck the ground. Swoosh! William pulled the long sword out of the orc's head. Green blood dripped down. He did not stop. He jumped onto a tree and continued to look for other patrol teams. It seemed like a complicated battle, but in fact, it took less than 3 seconds. When Lautner saw this scene, he could not help but feel shocked. These 5 orcs did not even have the chance to shout and were easily defeated by the Lord. He did not even use a battle energy technique. Lautner sighed in his heart. The difficulty of jumping archery was extremely high. Even he had practiced for a long time before he could completely master it. He did not expect that the Lord was actually hiding his skills. Lautner swallowed his saliva. How many people did he deceive in the Dark Night City? Chapter 17. Draw the bow and shoot the arrow. Draw the bow and shoot the arrow. Arrows surrounded by aura accurately hit the patrolling beastmen. Lautner saw this scene. The ugly heads of the orcs that had fallen to the ground were all hit by the arrows, but they were not pierced through. Only the places where the arrows had passed through did a small amount of green blood flow out. The smell of blood was very sparse, and in this primitive forest, it could not spread far. This was enough to show that William's archery experience was indeed very experienced. William looked at the continuous increase in experience, his face full of smiles. He could already upgrade the Battle Energy Secret Manual, but it was not level 5, so it was useless to upgrade it. There were no changes to the special effects and skills. Killing monsters of a higher level gave a lot of experience, even for a legendary boss like William. If he could kill monsters that were 20 levels higher than him, he could at most get 10 times the experience. But there was a certain requirement for the damage of the monsters. Only when the damage reached 100%, the player's experience could be increased by 10 times. As the damage percentage decreased, the experience would also decrease. This also prevented the player from being opportunistic and only killing the last bit of the monster's health. As for some consumables, of course, it could also be used to kill monsters that were 20 levels higher than him in one move. But how many players could afford to use this method? Wasn't this cheating them of their money? So, substitute leveling was inevitable. Back then, William had leveled up with rich people and spent the money earned to reach the legendary level step by step, and as a legendary substitute leveling, his reputation had also skyrocketed, becoming one of the best substitute leveling in the legendary continent. In addition, after the price of substitute leveling had increased by a few times, it became more and more unstoppable for him to become a substitute leveling. After all, players who could reach the legendary level in this game were all popular in the guilds, and they would not go to substitute leveling. He killed the patrolling orcs in one go, but the orcs at the gathering place did not notice. Instead, because dinner had started, they were all shouting and excitedly tore at the barbecued meat. All of them were eating heartily, their mouths dripping with oil. William stood on the treetop and looked at the orc leader. This guy was the most undignified. As he ate the barbecued meat, he scratched his crotch and even used his nose to sniff his hand. It seemed that the smell was very strong, and as he smiled, he grabbed the barbecued meat again to eat. This group of idiots! William raised his eyebrows. They were eating now, so there was no way to sneak an attack. Moreover, after dinner, the beastmen would replace the patrolling beastmen. At that time, they would definitely discover the enemy invasion. Then, I can only use the pirated exploding arrows. Su Hao glanced at the orc settlement. There were a total of 8 large bonfires. As long as a douchi arrow was shot into it, the sudden contact between the douchi and the flame would produce friction. After the friction, the douchi and the flame would produce a chemical reaction. In any case, it could cause an explosion. There was no need to ask why. Anyway, this was how the game was designed. It was one of the rules of the gods' continent. Oh, there's no oil sac. Otherwise, the flames on your bodies would burn even more fiercely. William sighed. They could hang something on the arrows. For example, poison sacs, oil sacs, and even various elemental crystals. As long as one could learn exploding arrow and equip these items, a single shot would be able to produce a pretty good area of effect. Otherwise, when one reached the intermediate level, one would be able to obtain a similar attribute aura. For the orcs, the flame-exploding arrow was their nemesis. Although they had rough skin and thick flesh, and each of them looked like a bear, except for their heads, they basically had a whole body of black hair. After taking off their armor, each of them was a muscular tyrant covered in chest hair. William Blackleaf took a deep breath and drew his bow to the limit. The battle energy arrow suddenly shot out. Swoosh! Boom! A large bonfire suddenly exploded. The moment the flames spread, it immediately turned the nearest dozen orcs into flaming orcs. They bared their fangs and brandished their claws. It was a very spectacular sight. As for the other burning charcoal, with the power of the explosion, it immediately hit the bodies of dozens of orcs. The orcs with the most hair on their bodies instantly wailed. All of them wanted to pluck out all their hair. After all, the hairy orcs represented strong physique. They also sat at the front when eating, but the more hair they had, the more afraid they were of fire. William did not stop. The speed at which he drew his bow had reached the limit. Arrows shot crazily into the bonfire. In a short span of 3 seconds, 8 huge bonfires exploded one after another. The loud noise did not travel far in the forest, but it also caused many wild beasts to roar. All kinds of birds were startled and fled in all directions. Ugly elf, I see you. I want to eat your thigh meat. Ah! The orc leader was a berserker. He was not tall, but he was also very smart. So he dodged at the first moment, and there were no injuries on his body. However, his subordinates had suffered heavy casualties, and the enraged orc leader rushed over with large strides with 2 axes in hand. William's mouth twitched. What kind of lousy hobby was this? It was obvious that this lowly B***starred had never eaten real elves before. He only knew how to talk nonsense. Elves obviously did not have thigh meat, cough, cough. William had never eaten it before. He had only heard of it. After the baptism of the exploding arrows, the 500 orcs were instantly reduced to more than 300. After all, this group of orcs had just opened up a new gathering place. They could not make a fire in the cave, so they could only do it outside. But they did not cut down too many trees, so they could only gather together. In the end, William almost wiped them all out. Even the remaining 300 orcs were covered in sparks, as if they were burning chimpanzees. The orc leader was a level 35 boss. His bloodline level was not clear, but as long as William was not stupid, he would not go down the tree to fight with him. A group of orcs surrounded him. He stood on the tree and shot wildly. His archery was so accurate that it was terrifying. The orcs that were running quickly were still shot in the head. Then, they were thrown to the ground. Until now, William Blackleaf had not missed a single shot. Damn Elfin Ranger, come down! The orc leader suddenly jumped up, his 2 axes shining with battle energy at the same time. Crack! The waist-thick tree was cut in half by the axe, but William had already lightly jumped onto another tree and continued shooting. He did not deny his identity as an Elfin Ranger. After all, he had no choice. The occupation of the Guardian of Dawn was half ranger and half warrior. But you might not believe it, but his archery was more accurate than a ranger's, and his attack was higher than a warrior's. It was not that there were no archers in this orc gathering place, but there were very few orc archers. Few meant that they were elites, and elites meant that they were close to the fire. After a series of explosions, there were only 3 to 5 orc archers left. But all of them were seriously injured, and did not have the strength to shoot arrows. Even if some people threw their weapons wildly, they could not throw accurately. So William jumped between the trees to kite. He was as agile as an elfin, but this group of orcs could not catch up at all. The orc leader could only watch with bloodshot eyes as the tragedy continued to happen. William was shooting wildly. When his quiver ran out of arrows, another quiver would be thrown at him, so he did not lack arrows at all. But kiting was not unlimited. The moment the surrounding trees were cut down, William, who was surrounded by the orcs, could only stop this cruel killing. Chapter 18. To catch bandits, first capture the leader. On the battlefield, as long as the leader of the army was killed, the enemy's morale would be extremely low. It was even possible to make them kneel down and beg for mercy. This trick was tried and tested by the orcs. How could a level 10 legendary boss kill a level 35 orc boss? That was the time to show off his skills. William jumped down from the treetop again. He gracefully pulled his bow in midair. His arms were filled with battle energy that shone with white light. Fatal consecutive shots erupted. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 3 arrows wrapped in sharp battle energy streaked across the night sky like 3 dazzling meteor showers. In an instant, the arrows hit the orc boss's head one after another. Rays of light lit up. Even though the orc boss had thick skin and flesh, when the arrows hit his head, he couldn't help but raise his head and take a few steps back. Even though his battle energy shield was very strong, when the 3 arrows hit the same spot, the battle energy shield was finally broken. He held his 2 axes and howled in pain. He instantly half-knelt on the ground and covered his right eye. William's fatal consecutive shots could continuously increase the damage as long as all of them hit. The last arrow had already increased the damage by 160%. In addition to the double damage from the headshot, the orc boss instantly lost a lot of health points. D***MN, D***MN, you little bastard, I'm going to kill you. The orc leader ruthlessly pulled out the arrow from his eye socket. He roared and rushed forward with his subordinate. William, who had no time to climb the tree, took a deep breath. He pulled his bow again. At this moment, the light of dawn was activated. 50% battle energy was added to the fatal consecutive shot. It could increase the attack power by 200%. At that moment, almost all the orcs who were charging forward felt a fatal chill. This kind of elfin archer who only shot at the head made them really afraid. But they were already very close. Some orcs couldn't help but start fantasizing. If they could kill William, it was completely possible for them to fall into a climax of excitement. Many orc girls would run into their arms after the battle. They would then enjoy the treatment of a hero. And the orc leader's eyes were already red from the arrows. As a berserker, he had completely fallen into a state of madness. Seeing his body emitting red light, he had no intention of dodging. But this was enough to prove one thing. He had already activated his berserker state. There was only one word in his mind. That is, F***CK. Hence, while William was retreating and dodging for a short period of time, 3 streams of light streaked across the night sky from his hands. They pierced through the air and hit their targets instantly. Bang, bang, bang. Blood splattered everywhere. The orc leader that was wielding its axes did not manage to block any of the arrows. The 3 arrows hit the orc leader's head almost at the same time. In fact, when the last arrow pierced through the orc leader's skull, many people heard a cracking sound. Pring! The head of the orc leader, which was wielding 2 axes, burst into bright red brain matter, and he fell heavily to the ground. He was almost defenseless and only knew how to act recklessly. At this moment, he completely lost his life. The level 35 orc boss was very strong. However, he was just a guy with a high-rank bloodline. In terms of bloodline potential, he could not be compared to William. Of course, this guy was considered fierce to the players, but in the face of a level 10 legendary boss, coupled with the problem of equipment, they were evenly matched. Because the William who had changed occupations was very different from the William who had not changed occupations. Especially in terms of attributes, he had an epic inner armor and a legendary battle energy skill. In terms of attributes, he was only slightly weaker than the orc boss, but in terms of skills, he completely crushed the orc boss. Even in terms of intelligence, the orcs were also crushed. It was also because of the death of the orc leader that the charging orcs could not help but stop in their tracks. Even some berserkers could not help but swallow their saliva. The word reckless was enough to run through their entire lives. But the leader had been reckless to the point of death. Their intelligence had some side effects, and that was to stop charging. After all, the deterrence of the few arrows that had killed their leader had really made them tremble in fear. William stood alone in front of more than 200 orc warriors, as if he had the aura of fighting thousands of soldiers alone. The reason why he killed the orc leader first was because this method would cause a fear buff to the ordinary orc warriors. Otherwise, how could he kill all the orcs alone? But the effect is not too big. William raised his eyebrows. This group of orc warriors did not escape and seemed to be hesitating, so he waved his hand. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Instantly, 200 elfin soldiers wearing elite armor appeared around him. When the elfin archers aimed their arrows at this group of orcs, they finally threw away their weapons and cried as they knelt on the ground to surrender. Looking at their trembling appearance, it was like a group of little girls surrounded by strong men. They looked at William with anticipation and a little despair, as if they were worried about their future. Territory Mission Crisis. The second stage has been completed. You have defeated the invaders by yourself. Although you need your subordinates to maintain order, you have also shown your true strength. Reward: 45,000 experience. Reward: large quantities of armor. After seeing the second reward, William could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth. He had thought that the second unknown reward would be something good, but in the end it was just some armor. This was clearly a free gift. As long as he killed these orcs, of course, he could easily obtain their armor. It was a pity that the orc armor was too ugly and did not fit. It needed to be melted down and rebuilt. As the orcs disarmed and surrendered, before William gave the order to kill them, the other elfins understood. One by one, they let them take off the last of their armor. One by one, they covered their younger brothers and lined up naked, and were properly arranged. There was no other reason. Creatures like orcs, other than dwarves, were experts in mining. Not only were they hard-working. In addition, with the small leather whip, they could also burst out with the mentality that the more they dug, the better they felt. Whether it was the elfins or the humans, as long as they could control the orc captives, they would basically choose to let them mine. Lord Knox, who had gone to the cave to search for spoils of war, suddenly ran over with a face full of joy. William, who had been thinking about how to level up, looked over and his eyes lit up. Armor? Yes, in the cave we actually found the armor and weapons of the human warriors. They are all of good quality. There are more than 300 sets. Knox laughed as he carried the blood-stained armor and weapons. William secretly thought that the mission did not lie to him. He casually picked up the armor and weighed it. He raised his eyebrows. Bring them all back and polish off the symbols on the armor and weapons. When the time comes to recruit soldiers, there won't be a lack of equipment. Understood. Knox nodded and commanded the other soldiers to start moving the good things out of the orc cave. How did the equipment and weapons of the Iron Nation soldiers end up in the hands of the orcs? Lautner saw this scene and felt a little puzzled. I don't know, but they are all mine now, William said indifferently. The war between the orcs and the humans had never stopped. After the orcs obtained the spoils of war from the human soldiers, they would usually find merchants to sell them. If there were no accidents, these armors would eventually be bought by those adventurous merchants. And the orcs would also exchange for some food, such as salt, cloth, rare items, etc. So it was not a big problem to seize the armor of the Iron Nation. However, after someone brought over a pitch-black scale, the black scale disappeared. The two of them instantly widened their eyes and asked in confusion, "Dragon scale?" Chapter 19. According to the patterns and size, it must be a dragon scale. But it's not a giant dragon's. It's a human scale. I wonder if this dragon scale belongs to a dragon speaker or a dragon follower. Lautner's eyes were filled with doubt and caution. Both dragon speakers and dragon followers had the bloodline of the dragon race. They were not to be trifled with. William stretched out his hand and took the small dragon scale. The information of the material appeared. Dragon scale. A scale dropped by a dragon speaker. Quality, silver. William frowned slightly. Both dragon speakers and dragon followers had the bloodline of the dragon race. Their bloodline potential was not weaker than that of the elves, or even stronger. Basically, they had the bloodline potential of a grandmaster or above. In particular, they had transformation skills. After transformation, their bodies would be covered with scales. Not only could it greatly increase their defense and recovery, but it could also increase their attack power, movement speed, and so on. In short, it was an all-round increase in attribute. The difference between dragon speakers and dragon followers was that dragon speakers cast dragon language magic on NPCs, allowing them to have a part of their bloodline abilities. They were servants of the dragon race. As for dragon followers, they bathed in dragon blood, but there was a high chance of death. But no matter which type, those with the bloodline of the dragon race should not be underestimated. But there was one point. Dragon speakers were rare. Whether it was the elemental dragons, metal dragons, or gem dragons, they were all extremely stingy existences. They rarely sacrificed their blood for their servants and kin and cast dragon language magic to transform them into dragon speakers. This also caused dragon speakers to be even rarer. But in comparison, they were definitely stronger than dragon followers. Because, other than transformation, they could also use powerful dragon language magic. As for dragon followers? Basically, they could only rely on killing dragons. It was very difficult to build relationships between humans and dragons. There was only one choice, and that was to die. There were also many levels of dragon followers. But the most common were dragon followers who bathed in ordinary dragon blood and dragon followers who bathed in dragon heart blood. They are all things that can increase attribute. Should I try them in the future? William touched his chin. After players entered the game, there were only so many races to choose from. But in the later stages of the game, there were many ways to change one's race. But there were pros and cons to changing one's race. Choosing to become a dragon speaker basically meant betraying the human race. The only way to become a dragon speaker was to subdue a dragon and have it cast draconic magic on you. Otherwise, they could only choose to become his servant. However, if one chose to become a dragon speaker, they would have to change factions. After changing factions, the reputation and favorable impression points that one had previously in the faction would be reset to 0. The things that one would come into contact with would also become very limited. From then on, the quest, storyline, main storyline, and so on might not have anything to do with the players. But the benefits were self-evident. It was the equivalent of entering a long-term hidden quest. If he did well, he might even become a top-tier player. Of course, if you didn't want to change factions, you could tame a giant dragon and become a dragon knight. But no matter how you looked at it, such a great title was a top-level quest that could only be completed in the later stages of the game. On the other hand, the requirements to become a dragon follower weren't that high. After all, dragon slayers loved to bathe in dragon's blood and drink it to strengthen themselves. However, how many players had the chance to bathe in dragon's blood in the early and middle stages of the game? Who said that bathing in dragon's blood would definitely make one a dragon follower? Even a newborn dragon was no match for players in the early stages of the game. Those cute-looking dragon whelps only needed to use their dragon's breath, and it would be a group area of effect attack. No matter how happy the players were, the corpses would fall one by one. The aroma of barbecued meat filled their noses, causing the orcs next door to cry. As for the players' damage, they couldn't break through their defense at all. Of course, there would also be some players with extremely high luck points. They might encounter a giant dragon that was about to die, or an NPC just happened to give them some dragon's blood or something. It's said that there has always been a giant dragon on the snow mountain of the East Sea. This dragon's scale should have come from there. Lautner gradually shifted his gaze to the east. The snow mountain of the East Sea was also located in the Blackleaf Forest, close to the southeast corner of the sea. The highest peak was 13,000 meters above sea level. Above 6,000 meters, there was not even a blade of grass. It was covered with snow and strange rocks, and it was an active volcano. But Lautner didn't know what kind of giant dragon lived on the snow mountain of the East Sea. William narrowed his eyes and shook his head. Don't care about that. The snow mountain of the East Sea is more than 300 miles away from the territory. No matter where this dragon's scale came from, it doesn't matter. But when he turned to leave, he couldn't help but feel a headache. The game version 1.0 was the story of two nations fighting for hegemony. This was also the main mission that players could participate in. But this didn't mean that nothing happened in the Blackleaf Forest. It also didn't mean that there were no wars in the other nations' territories in the legendary continent. He remembered that after the Iron Nation occupied the border territories, they often had conflicts with the races in the Blackleaf Forest. Many races would appear in every war, including orcs, gnolls, trolls, and so on. If the Iron Nation had not defeated the Black Lava Nation in the end and sent a large number of troops to guard the border town, it was very likely that this place would have been completely occupied by the foreign races. And the reason why these guys repeatedly occupied the territory of the Black Lava Nation was because they had the support of a strong force behind them. Among them, the dragon speakers appeared many times, causing heavy casualties to the Iron Nation. They had no choice but to send many epic experts to guard the border town. But there seemed to be a deep hatred between the two sides. Neither was willing to take a step back, and there were continuous wars. There were tens of thousands of players who participated in the war over a long period of time, and the rewards were very high. Some players only understood after digging deep into the mission. It turned out that the giant dragon in the snow mountain of the East Sea had been ambushed by the Iron Nation. That war could be said to be a lose-lose situation. Even though the giant dragon had recuperated for half a year, it had not completely recovered. But it was conscious and could already command the clans and servants to wage war. So, I have a slim chance of survival? When William thought of this, he couldn't help but curse. His border town happened to be on the border between the two sides. It was a place that military experts had to fight for. Whoever occupied this place first would obtain a favorable advantage. In his previous life, even if William could avoid the attack of the Iron Nation, he probably wouldn't be able to defend this border town. Because if the giant dragon in the snow mountain of the East Sea wanted to attack the Iron Nation, it had to first occupy the border town. The value of the other places was not too great, and it was very likely that the Iron Nation knew that the giant dragon would take revenge. Hence, they used the source of the mithril mine to destroy William in his previous life. Then, from now on, there is still 1.5 years of development time. Only by becoming strong and having a strong military force can I completely stand firm in the border town. Otherwise, no matter who attacks, if I want to survive, I have to give up this territory. William clenched his fist. He didn't want to pack up and run away at the start of the battle. His legendary father had left him a territory with an extremely outstanding geographical advantage. He couldn't easily give it up. But if the Iron Nation wants to ambush the giant dragon, it's not like I can't benefit from it. I didn't know in the beginning, but now that I have some understanding, I definitely have to plan. If the Iron Nation is still so shameless and continues to steal the giant dragon's chrysanthemum, they really don't take me, the king of the wilderness, seriously. William narrowed his eyes. He looked at the warriors who had gathered the resources and equipment and waved his hand. Those 300 orcs go into the iron mine. The rest of you follow me home. Yes, my lord. A sonorous and powerful voice resounded in the night sky. The remaining elfin warriors followed this brave and resourceful lord back to his territory. And on the way, William raised his Holy Dawn battle energy to level 5. The other 3 skills were raised to level 3. Finally, he used the remaining experience on himself. At this moment, William was level 14. He had obtained 24 free attribute points and added them to agility and strength. His health had also increased by a lot. Holy Dawn battle energy level, legendary level, level 5, 0/1600 experience, battle energy points, 50 points recovery speed, 15 points per second. Activated special effects and skills are as follows. Special effect. Any battle energy skill will have a 5% increase in power. Special effect. Power +8, physical strength +8, agility +8, intelligence +5. Special effect. Health +450. Special effect. Endurance +200. Battle energy shield. The surface of the body can produce a battle energy shield equal to the battle energy value. Every second consumes 40 battle energy points. The basic defense is 150. If the attack power exceeds the upper limit of the defense, it can consume battle energy and even break the shield. After the shield disappears, it can be activated again after 5 seconds. Light of Dawn. On a certain battle energy skill, it can increase the battle energy value by 50% and increase the attack power by 210%. Cooldown of 26 minutes. Every 5 levels, it can increase the attributes, special effects, skills, etc. The attributes added by the battle energy have the effect of the bloodline bonus. Blessing of the Elfin God, passive, level 3 skill attribute. Long-range physical attack power increased by 15%. Consumption, none cooldown, none level 3 special effect, additional 3% true damage. Fatal shot level 3 skill attribute. consumes 130 battle energy points, and can shoot 3 arrows in a row. If all the arrows hit the enemy, the first arrow will cause 140% damage, the second arrow will cause 160% damage, and the third arrow will cause 180% damage. There is a certain chance of causing bleeding. Level 3 Special Effect. If all 3 arrows hit the head, the third arrow will cause 150% critical damage to the enemy. Special Effect Cooldown: 30 seconds. Cooldown: 7 seconds. Battle Energy Cut Level. Level 3 Skill Attribute. Consumes 50 battle energy points and swings a sword energy forward. If it hits the enemy, it can cause 160% damage. There is a certain chance of causing bleeding. Level 3 Special Effect. The sword energy has the effect of repelling and tearing, depending on the situation. Cooldown: 3 seconds. This is the benefit of the legendary Battle Energy Secret Book. As long as the skill is upgraded to level 3, the special effect can appear in advance. William smiled. He had to say that he was more and more confident about his future survival.